What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to Black Man Unfiltered Network. Get your popcorn ready. Ladies, get your glass of wine together right now. Sip it, because we're about to take you on an emotional journey that you've never been on in your life. You're going to laugh, you're going to cry, you're going to be mad, you're going to be happy, you're going to agree, you're going to disagree, and that's what Black Man Unfiltered is about. We want all of you to have a voice, and this is the place where voices are heard. So thank you guys, because we're going to have the conversations that nobody else wants to have, and we're going to come to a medium, we're going to come to solutions, or we're going to agree to disagree, but you're in the right place to do it. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and I want to introduce you guys to all the shows that's on the network coming up on this next slide. Peace!
This is Security Boss. Listen, guys, I'm coming to you with something new and very exciting. It's called I Choose You. Yes, it's a new dating show, and we want all of you to get excited about it. Yes, it is a dating show. It's going to be a virtual dating show. We want all you bachelors and your bachelorettes to get excited about it. So stay tuned for I Choose You.
Driving around in California, looking for something to make me stay. Round and round forever searching for something that I could never get replaced. Don't need you to save me, but I just really need to be saved. I'm just so sick of waiting for any luck to come my way. Yeah.
Black Man Unfiltered. What's up, my brother? Oh my God.
My man, Black Man Unfiltered. Shout out to
you guys go follow this smart man right here. This smart man right here. Black Man Unfiltered. Go follow him.
It's a great show. It is an absolute great show. Yeah, you are missing out if you are not tuned in and subscribe to Black Man Unfiltered Network.
I ain't ready yet.
Everybody in this panel, everybody in this chat, before you leave here, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure that you are subscribed, because whether you agree or not, you see that this is a higher level of conversation that we're having. So if you can hang with it, you're more than welcome to come on in and support Black Man Unfiltered and the messages that he's putting out here.
Ladies and gentlemen, give me a one in the chat if you can hear me in there. Hear me. How y'all doing? And how y'all doing tonight? All right. Now, y'all know how I like to start off. I like to go to the sanctuary first, see who's sitting in the sanctuary tonight. So let's see who we got. We got Brittany B in here. She said she gets off at 10:40. Brittany B, I'll be waiting for you. We got E. Denise. She's an hour ahead, guys. She's an hour ahead of us. She's in, I think she's on the East Coast. We got E. Denise in the building tonight. Good to see you, E. Denise. Yeah, thank you for being here as well. We got Jenny Moraine in the house, one of the best moderators working my chat for me tonight. Thank you, Jenny. I thank you for being here, hon. We got Miss Carrington in the building. We got Boss Lady Iris in the building. We got Big Bad Bull is in the building tonight. Good to see you, Big Bad Bull. We got Stephen Day. I see you, Stephen Day, in the building. I see Carl's car in the building. Come on. I see OG Patrice. Listen, I need to send you the link. This is what you need to be here tonight. OG Patrice, let me see. Email me, OG Patrice at blackmanunfiltered@gmail.com, and I'll send it to you. All right, good to see you. Right, hey, we got D. Wolford in the building. Diane Wolford is in the building tonight. Diane, what's going on, Sugarfoot? All right. Good to see everybody, man. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go ahead and open up and let you guys know. Tonight's going to be an episode. We've been talking about a lot of stuff lately. We had the conversation with our Black ladies that went very, very well. If you haven't seen that, please go back and watch it. We had a show entitled a discussion about the Black woman with Black women. And we had a panel full of Black women, and they discussed today's things that are going on in the community, on what they can do, what they see. It was an amazing show. Also, we got Security Boss is in the building tonight. Good to see you, hun. Hey, listen, hope you can stop by. You know, I love you, Security Boss. So yeah, thank you for being here. Yes, I sure will, OG Patrice. 1 second. I'm dropping the link for OG Patrice only for right now, guys, for her to come in. So let me get OG Patrice in here. Give me 1 second. Let's see. All right, there you go, OG Patrice. All right. So again, guys, thank you guys for being here. Now, I also want to have a thank you. Now, we're going to have a huge celebration, guys. We're going to do it because if it weren't for you, I would not be here. We did hit 1,000 subs to monetize my channel. So thank you, guys. I appreciate you guys for that. Yeah. We monetized this channel, and it was because of you guys. You guys were faithful. You guys were here every week. You guys subscribed. You got your cousin, your grandma and them. You got everybody involved, and I thank you. I thank God for all of you. You guys are amazing in helping me get to that 1,000. We're over 1,000, so thank you so much for subscribing and being here. Now, think about this. We're going to have it, right? We're going to have the discussion, okay? We're going to have the discussion. We're going to have a celebration. We're going to have some fun. We're going to have a panel full of people that started with me, and we're going to work it out, all right? So, again, tonight, we also want to welcome the Hood Pastor, the guy, the CEO himself is in the building tonight. My guy, my brother, Charles Wolford II is in the building tonight, guys. He's here. Yeah. He's here. Yeah, he'll be up in a minute. We're going to talk about discipline versus abuse. This is going to be a great conversation. So you know how I like to do it. We're going to go ahead and bring up everybody here. Candid Ann, thank you for being here. Hey, thank you for saving all those lives as a nurse. Candid Ann is a nurse. Everybody knows that. She's out saving lives. She said this show helps her get through her shift. So thank you, Candid Ann, for being here. And thank you, Jenny. I appreciate you as well, honey. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start bringing up the panel first, and then we'll bring in our special guest. The first person I want to bring in is none other than the OG herself. OG Patrice, I ain't seen you since Moses threw the tablets off the mountain, OG Patrice, but we're going to bring you up anyway. OG Patrice, come on up, girl. How you doing tonight, Suge?
I'm good. Can you hear me, baby boy? Can you hear me, baby boy?
I can hear you. I can hear you very well. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Good to hear from you, girl. You've been hiding.
I know. You know what? It's good to hear from you too. It's good to see you and be back. I just been, kind of chilling, taking a mental break, coming in here and there a little bit. But I want to say to you, congratulations on you becoming monetized.
Yes.
And for that celebration, I'm going to cam up for you.
Hey, that's what I'm talking about. Hey, what's up, girl?
What's good?
Girl, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
I'm camming up for you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you. So listen, next week we got Dr. Panderson is in the building tonight. We're gonna get Dr. Panderson up here. Dr. Panderson, how are you tonight?
What's good? What's going on? How you feeling?
Man, I am doing absolutely great, man. Thank you, man, for being here, brother. I appreciate you.
Congrats on the 1,000.
Oh yeah, man. Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate it. All right, so and then listen here, we got Mandrell in the building tonight. Mandrell is in the building, guys. Let's give it up for the guy, Mandrell. What's going on, man? How you doing?
Going on. I'm ready.
All right,
ready for Fight Club tonight, man. I got the Shaolin Temple behind me.
Oh man, come on! I seen it. I was just going to say something about that. But anyway, and Tawana G, thank you for being here, sweetheart. I appreciate
you. What's up, OG Patrice?
Hey, Mandrell.
Anderson, what's going on?
All right.
So long time no see. I cammed up for my boy, so you can't even see. I cammed up for him.
When I had Nathan Daly on, that's when I wanted you. I wanted you here for that.
Yeah,
I see.
I wanted you here for that.
You should have told Black Man Unfiltered to reach out to me. He know how to reach out to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I got a bone to pick with Mr. Nathan Daly.
And I figured you guys perfect time for y'all to hash that.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
It's all in good faith.
We got three doctors in the building tonight. We got Dr. Panderson. We got Dr. Bennett in the building tonight. Man,
all right.
Dr. Bennett, come on up, man. Dr. Bennett, come on. What's going on, man?
Good evening.
Dr. Bennett, what's going on?
Going well.
Hello. We got the doctors in the house.
Nice meeting you. Nice meeting you.
And
nice meeting you too.
Now, guys, before we bring up our special guest of the night to join our panel, we got the Canadian born, but we don't call him that. You guys know what we call him. All right. But before I bring him up, I'm going to bring up the beautiful. If you read the Bible, the first book of the Bible is Genesis. Right. And so what happened is her mom got together with God and said, you know what? I want to name my daughter that. And when she gets older, she's going to name her channel that. So in the house tonight, we got the book of Genesis is in the building tonight.
Hey, y'all.
What's going
on? Hey, Genesis.
Hey, Mandrell.
What's going on, love? What's going on? All right. Now, before we bring up our special guest, we got somebody in the building, guys, before we bring up our special guest. Y'all know who he is. We call him Bob. The big oil baby. We call him the Nigerian sledgehammer. He's been in IT for 20 years. He is a IT guru. If you need anything going on with your computer, your tech, this guy is the guy to call. Who you going to call? Canadian born. He's in the building tonight. What's going on, Canadian born Nigerian? It's good to see you, man. Good to see you. It's good to see you.
All right. 20 years.
20 years. Okay.
20 years.
All right. Now, guys, our special guest for the evening, a man, we call him the hood pastor. I call him the hood pastor. I call him brother. He's he's a man of God. He's a man of faith. He's a man that loves children. He's the CEO of Promise House of Dallas, Texas. And he's here to talk to us tonight about abuse, and this is going to be a good conversation. And tonight we have in the building tonight Charles Wolford II is in here tonight. God, let's give it up for him. How you doing tonight, Doc?
Man, I'm good. I need that the gentleman who's an expert in technology to help me out tonight, but we're gonna try to make it. Good to see everybody, and congratulations for the 1,000.
Man, I appreciate it. I appreciate you, man. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get this show started. Let me bring everybody up to the forefront here. It's good to see everybody. Pull everybody in. Bam, there we go. All right, so I wanted to have this show because it came up, and me and Book of Genesis was on a panel, and we talked about this, about children and about child abuse and about how it could be looked at. And also, a few Sundays ago, I had an opportunity to hear Charles Wolford here to speak about it. And when he was speaking about the numbers. He had the numbers, the statistics about, and he broke it down where it's happening in the state of Texas where we are, how it's happening to the kids, the percentage of kids it's happening to, who does it more, the male or the female. He had it broken down. So I want to start with that right now. If you could give us some insight on that particular thing, Pastor Wolford, on what you do, introduce yourself and what you do, and then go into that for us if you can.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you for the invite, brother. It's good to see you all. And for the rest of the panel, we are grateful for this opportunity just to share with you all my experience. I've been working in this field for about 30 years, particularly as it relates to working with children who've been abused by no fault of their own. And I'm grateful I now serve as the CEO of Promise House in Dallas, Texas. We are the primary and the only shelter in Dallas, Texas that take in young people that are having shelter insecurities. And I was just sharing with our congregation, April is Child Abuse Awareness Month. And for our congregation, was just highlighting and spotlighting the numbers and the staggering statistics, particularly as it relates to child abuse in our community. Texas, unfortunately, we like to say everything is bigger in Texas, and unfortunately, the number of child abuse cases that are reported, Texas leads the way in the country of the number of reported child abuse cases. And so I wanted to put a spotlight on that and give our congregation an opportunity just to talk through what is the difference between abuse and discipline and signs and symptoms that we can see when a young person is experiencing abuse, and just talk through that. At the front of this, I would just encourage anybody, if you know a young person that you've seen some signs and symptoms of them, particularly of possibly being abused, the first thing that I would encourage you is is to, if you see something, say something. You can call Child Abuse Services, 1-800-252-5200. You can call the Texas Abuse Hotline at texasabuse.org, or call 911, particularly as it relates to making a report to that. But we just wanted to bring some attention to what's happening in the state of Texas, but what's happening to children at large. Having seen this in so many different instances across the country and in this state, I think, Dewayne, that we can open up and have a conversation about what we see and how we can mitigate this and make sure that our kids and our community stays safe. So thank you for this opportunity.
Absolutely, absolutely. So can you go into, because when you were speaking about it, you gave percentages and who and how the kids were hurt. Do you have that? Do you still have that information with you? Or I know you probably know it by heart, but you know, when you were saying that babies, and you gave the age of the children that are harmed the most and all that, could you go through that for us real quick?
Yeah, sure. The data that we were sharing as far as the percentage of children that are abused, we know that children under the age of 3 are statistically abused more than any age children, and 80% of those children who are abused by the mother in the home. And there's different categories of abuse. We know one of the primary ones, statistically, that most, as we classify abuse, you got physical abuse, you got neglect, emotional abuse, and sexual abuse. The highest of those are identified as neglect. That's obvious malnourishment, inadequate nutrition, lack of personal cleanliness. And so we just ran through the data and statistics, disproportionate of how many kids get abused by their mother under the age of 3. And it's tragic to hear and to say that. And when we tell people that 80% of children who abuse are abused by their mother, that seems to be a little bit off kilter, because we oftentimes believe that mothers are the nurturers and the loving, caring ones. But statistically, They are the ones who oftentimes abuse kids the most. But then secondly, the number one reporters of abuse are teachers. Our teachers tend to report that because they start seeing the scarring and the bruising. When we went through this pandemic and we saw kids were not going to school, the incidence of child abuse in the state of Texas, but across the country, exponentially increased because no one was watching and no one was reporting. And so we've just seen numbers increase in that space, particularly as it relates to children having been abused.
Wow. So last week we were talking about, I think Dr. Bennett, you were here as well. I think half of you guys were here. We were talking about in relationships. Can you tell us what's the difference between disciplining a child and abusing a child?
Oh, absolutely.
In a physical manner.
Yeah, so the clear delineation of that, and you have to use just from our terminology. Discipline is used for instruction. Discipline is a way to instruct, to give guidance, to teach. It is not meant to harm. Discipline, as it is to make sure that the individual is going to be better and they will improve from the corrective action that you are trying to share with them. That is what discipline is. Abuse is anything that maladjusts the kid's behavior in such the way that the injury could be permanent and that injury could be long lasting. That is abuse. Abuse is, if it's the frequency of the injury, if it's long lasting, and if it's done out of malice with the intent to injure that person, where it's caused physical, emotional, psychological, sexual harm to that individual.
So, does anybody have anybody want to respond to anything that he said already? Anybody?
Yeah. Well, real quick, you say 80% are by the women. That's not so hard to believe from my point of view. But my thing is, it gets down to, like, how are they abusing the children? Like, in what fashion? I know you said neglect is one, and of course that goes to malnourishment and things like that. Is like, what happens to the women after this is discovered is my ultimate question, because this is horrible.
Yeah, great question. Again, the main categories of abuse, as we've listed them, is physical abuse. That's number one. 2 is neglect, emotional abuse, and sexual. Those are the main categories, but we know that embedded in that are some psychological and emotional things that are embedded in those. But those are typically the categories that we find when there's reports of abuse that are being made to children. And again, the second part of your question is to identify that. Ways in which we begin to identify is when we see them at schools, you start seeing scarring, you're seeing kids withdrawn, you're seeing young people begin to lash out in other ways in the classroom. So there's a number of indicators that we began to see. I really would want to point the audience to the Dallas Children's Advocacy Center to see signs and symptoms that you'd be able to identify that. When you start seeing bruises and burns, I remember before I even got into the field, I was in the 9th grade, and it was really when I first was introduced to seeing one of my friends who was abused. He used to come to school with long sleeves all the time. And one time we was playing ball, and man, he pulled up. We were playing ball. He wore some shorts, and he had this big old iron mark on his leg. And man, I was just devastated. Even I remember that as a child, as a 9th grader. And then the more I got to know him, and I just began to be endeared to him. He was being abused at home and having lots of scarring. I mean, that was just the beginning. So there's scarring on his back, on his arms. So you start seeing burns and bruises, unusual patterns that indicate the use of some sort of instrument on them. Lack of reaction to pain is some of the things you begin to see when kids are being abused.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I mean, but I know I have questions because I didn't come from this. But number one, what possesses a person? Because this is a sore spot for me, abuse with children. You know what I'm saying? For me, there's no forgiveness for it and whatever. Number one, what possesses a person to do this to a child? Like, to go so far as to put an iron. I've heard about this kind of thing. And I've seen documentaries and things of that nature, right? Never experienced it for myself. Well, what possesses a person to put an iron on a child's body and call that discipline? And number two, ultimately what is done about it once this is discovered?
Yeah, so the first question is a little bit more difficult, particularly relates to why would someone do? Let me put my earphones in. I got my producer here who's telling me I need to put my earphones in. 1 second.
Okay.
We got good audio.
No problem. I was just wondering,
Hey, and so guys, while we're waiting to get him his headphones, Sir Hell Speaks is in the building tonight. Let's give it up for Sir Hell in the building tonight.
Shout out to my brother in the building, Black Man. What's up, brother?
What's going on, man?
Yeah, we hear you just fine. Yeah, the superstars come in.
Mandrell, I just wanted to kind of elaborate on your question, and maybe the good doctor can, after he's all set up, kind of chime in. I know that DCFS has reported, and Child Protective Service has reported, a lot of the parents come from abusive households themselves in some cases. And then, Mandrell, let me finish. I didn't say it was. I'm not done. I'm saying a lot of them are victims that become victimizers. A lot of them are mentally ill, and a lot of them are just plain evil and demonic and satanic and abusive. That's what I was going to say. It's a whole broad, broad spectrum, right, of where it stems from. A lot of the parents that are parents should, all parents shouldn't be parents just because they bore children. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, and that's the problem. So that's what I wanted to say. It stems from a broad spectrum of things. There's been on record where some parents are mentally ill. A lot of them come from abusive homes themselves, and they become the abusers. And a lot of them are just evil and mean and satanic and very twisted and sick.
Right. And
what do you have to say about that, Pastor Wolford? Hold on a minute.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but so a couple of things that we really want to just recognize. Again, we don't want to cast a negative aspersion on any particular group of individuals. However, what we do know, let's just take the 2 years that we've just come out of the pandemic. 80% of adults polled during the pandemics increased the levels of increase in anxiety of just adults during the pandemic. It's off of the chart. So when you add stressors, economic stressors, familiar stressors with an individual, they tend to lash out and do not necessarily choose the best objects to do so. And so when you have children in space with individuals who already may not have good coping mechanisms and the ability to communicate effectively, and those stressors compound, it's not a justification by any means. So what we want to do as best as we can, we as a community, we have to find ways to provide quality training. None of us, as those of us who are parents, when we had children, were handed a parenting manual and say, this is how you parent your children. We oftentimes get it by what we learn from our parents and our grandparents and community. And so we have to do a better job in our communities, in our churches. That's why as a senior pastor of my church, I highlight these incidents. I've rarely heard from the pulpit other than when I preachers teaching and preaching about abuse, teaching about sexual assault, because oftentimes those things happen in the church and happen in other communities. So we have to put a spotlight that there has to be tools and classes that we educate individuals within our congregation, have those courses of parenting classes so that individuals can come and be able to have respite for families that have stressors so that they're not lashing out towards their children.
Anybody else have any other questions about?
I agree with that, but again, I think some of those things, those names, those list of things that I just said is also true, right? Because stressors, we can allow stressors to become a form of PTSD, which is a mental illness, and a lot of parents suffer from this, and they abuse their children because of the mental illness. A lot of it stems from them being abused themselves. I think I've seen incidents where I know that some parents were abused as a child, and they talked about it, and then they start to see that same trait in themselves with their own children. I agree with you that there needs to be more training and more parenting classes, but and I think also the system is has failed a lot of children, because a lot of children that come through the system, they have records of their parents being abusive to them, and they let them back into the household, and then the parents end up deleting them. There's been several cases, many cases of that as well. So I think that the responsibility lies on us as a community, as well as on the state, to do a better job with the processes that they have in place when it comes to Child Protective Services and Department of Children and Family Services.
Yeah, here's my thing to that, is that I don't understand. Like, if you were abused as a child, then you know how horrific and bad it was. Why would you then, in kind, put that on your own children? Like, my thing is this. I've seen child abuse in the worst way, but I was in Afghanistan. You know what I mean? And I wasn't supposed to do something about it, but I did anyway. I don't know what it is. It's just a switch flip. You know what I'm saying? And there's no way I could stand by and just let that happen. But I just, if you were like, for me, that's the worst one. Like someone was abused as growing up, like, so
right? But Mandrell, think of it like this.
Unless you just didn't want them, in which case put them up for adoption.
But think of how the brain perceives that, and it's just like the victim becoming the victimizer. Prime example of that is R. Kelly. He was sexually violated as a child, and he became a violator. It's a thing with the brain that splits, and there's a sickness, an illness, a twistedness in the spirit of that person to want to cause the same harm that was done to them. They want to inflict that pain on someone else. So just think about it.
So, Pastor Wolf, how do you respond to that? What you're hearing, Pastor Wolf?
Yeah. So again, there's lots of research on both sides of the fence, particularly as it relates to those who have abused, whether or not they become abusers. And let's just address a couple of things, particularly as it relates to, the topic is abuse and discipline. What are the difference between the two? So what happens to, particularly as it relates to corrective actions, usually abuse is an attempt to try to modify something that a person does not like. Let's say the child is crying, they're screaming, or they have picked up something that they should not. The attempt to strike that child is an attempt to try to correct that behavior, whatever that may be. And if you've not learned proper ways to train and teach, therefore you use instruments, your hand and tools as an attempt to try to correct that behavior. So disciplining and training, there's techniques that we have to employ to be able to do that. And so we really want to maybe dig into, what we can do as a community to have better training tools for young people at an early age, the proper way to verbalize your behavior. When we would train individuals who did not have verbal skills, where they cannot communicate, every behavior is a form of communication. All behavior is a form of communication. So therefore, we have to come up with tools and systems that's going to help a person who can express themselves verbally or visually, ways in which they can communicate. So it's really about how we train and teach individuals along the way, the different ways to effectively help train a child so that you're not abusing them. You're using better tools to do that.
So let's go around. Sir Hale Speaks. Go ahead with your question or response.
Excellent. Well, first of all, a shout out to Dr. Wolford. Glad to meet you. Good to see you. Dr. Bennett Mandrell, Book of Genesis, a Canadian. O.D. Patrice, Dr. Panderson, good to see you. I think it's a dangerous thing that we do as a culture. And here's what we do. We perpetuate what we survived. So because we were abused and we survived it and we came out good, we just keep on doing that. And a lot of people never stop to really address their own traumas. And essentially people do what they know. Like something I talked to my elders, and a lot of them, I think people forget that we're not too far removed from slavery. Right. We're not that far removed, right? So we still are dealing with the remnants or the residue of how slaves were dealt with and how they were severely punished for some of the most minor perceived offenses. And because we're not that far removed, and then go back a couple generations, therapy, they weren't doing no therapy. Their therapy was going to church. Oh, but the churches that they were going to, right, was still mimicked what happened in slavery, right? And so because we're not far removed, we didn't get enough therapy. A lot of our parents and grandparents they don't even have the strength to admit that what they went through was wrong. They're still trying to find a way to say that the good Lord he don't put more on you than you can bear, right? So because we survived and we throw God on that, it takes away from the severity of what we dealt with. And so we perpetuate that. Sure. So I don't think a lot of abusers do that because they set out one day and say, you know what, I'm going to abuse. But people do what they know. It's a toxic, diabolical perspective. But I think parents need to understand you have a profound effect to make your child a monster, whether they want to be or not, based off of what you put them through. And if it is as they get older and they don't learn better or have the space to say, Mama, you were wrong for that. Daddy, you were wrong for that. Without attaching honor thy mother and thy father, right? And using that as a means to not talk about what went wrong. Until we give people the freedom, they're going to do what they know. And I think that's what you see in a lot of abusers. Now, somebody did mention about the psychological issues. That is a part. But even the trauma that they went to feeds into that as well. So whether it's neurological or not, it is still psychological. People do what they know. People do what they've been through. People perpetuate how they've suffered.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, he's speaking facts. I mean, we are not too far removed, and as much as even our own community try to deny that, when the slaves were even freed, was there therapy? Did they get therapy? When we went through Jim Crow, when we went through Reconstruction, when we went through the Civil Rights Movement, we never got therapy. And a thing about trauma is it is generational, guys. It is passed down from generation to generation. And Sir Hill, you on the money, because we go to church and we say pray on it and God can fix it. And then a lot of abuse happened in the church. Like the good doctor was saying, and these are just facts, but our people want to say, oh, don't talk about that. We can't blame that on that. But no, it is something that has been generationally cursed amongst our community, especially. So thank you for bringing that to the light, because I think that is so important and so looked at. And when you go to the doctor and scientifically and in the mind, when they study the mind of a lot of Black people that have had trauma, that suffers with PTSD and depression, it is generational.
Yeah,
it's generational.
And let's just speak to the fact, to the oftentimes in these conversations, we may want to do some finger pointing and blaming. Let's use our humanity as our reality today, and that is, we certainly as African Americans has endured some significant trauma due to slavery, but disproportionately, white people abuse their kids more than African Americans. And when we look at our humanity and who we are, African Americans typically are more nurturers, caring, loving of our children, of our offsprings than other races, to be quite honest. So in a cultural context, you can use the argument, white folks, particularly as it relates to who may have not experienced going through a slavery, or if you want to point to Holocaust experience, whatever that context may be, it's not an excusable situation to say that's why we abuse, because it's a condition whereby individuals have not learned behaviorally how to manage themselves. And you look at some acute psychiatric issues, whatever those may be, the reality is it boils down to our humanity. When we have not been taught and trained how to regulate ourselves and how to communicate and regulate others, it turns into abuse.
Well, good doctor,
yes,
may I ask you a question?
Sure.
Would you not agree that the trauma that we received, our ancestors received, came from the most abusive people that there was? So that is probably the reason why they are the most abusive percentage,ally, disproportionately with their children. The ones that caused all of the the abuse to our people. So it would make logically sense to me that would be the case, that they would be the most abusive.
Well, I think that's limited in scope, because when you go to other cultural contexts in other countries, you see even more abuse, not just from those who are Caucasian, but you go to other communities in the Middle East. What we see as abuse over here, that's atrocities in other communities, how they treat their children and their women. So again, I would agree with you 100%. The trauma and the impact that slavery has had on us as a race of people. But the context of what we're trying to say, though, is our humanness and our behavior of who we are as a people. There's many situations, and we have to, validate the fact that it's our humanity that's fallen and that's broken that causes us to hurt each other.
Right. And good doctor, also, when you're speaking of other races and cultures like Asian communities, the discipline that they put on, like the corporal punishments that they put on their children and each other, comes from a cultural place. The Middle East come from a biblical place, what they believe, like with the women and children. The women stay behind. They stone you for things. They put you to death for things. So those cultures came from a biblical circumstances. Then the Asians, it's in their culture as corporal punishment, which is a difference. It's different forms of that type of discipline, you know what I mean? And harsh discipline and trauma. Trauma is all the same, but I'm saying differently. Each of our races received it in a different form, if you will. Would you agree to that?
No, I wouldn't. So again, I want to stick to how we've defined discipline and how we've defined abuse. We have to stick to its core premise here of what abuse is and what discipline is. It doesn't matter cultural context here. Abuse is abuse and discipline is discipline. Discipline.
Right, but you brought up the discipline versus the abuse.
Yeah,
I'm saying in the Asian culture, they think it's discipline, but it's abuse.
So
in the Middle Eastern culture, biblically, they think it's discipline, but it's abuse.
Okay,
that's all I'm saying.
I wouldn't disagree with you in that, because again, we want to create the baseline of what abuse and what discipline is, and how we are seeing it in our communities. So if we were to define it in those communities, yes, I would agree, we would consider that to be abuse. So I would agree with you on that. Absolutely.
And so Canadian born, Nigerian born Black David. I can't get your name right today for that. It's just, I mean, I've been knowing you for months. I just can't get your name right today. So Bob, we call him the big oil baby, Mr. Wolford.
Okay.
He's an ex-stripper, so pray for him tonight.
Yeah, I love that. All right, bro.
So
no condemnation, no judgment there.
Yeah. So he's a nice. So what do you have to say about it? And then we'll go to the book of Genesis.
Just like my name today, I'm an immigrant, and I get what you're saying. I understand that. Even in Africa, there are a lot of cultural situations whereby they believe discipline is discipline, not related to abuse. What I want to ask is, will you consider something like abuse to be a generational curse that being passed down from generation to generation, or would you consider it be something as a mental trauma?
Again, I wouldn't say it's a general. I think it's a behavior that's passed on, that is learned from those are behaviors that are passed on because we are parrots, we mimic behavior that we see. And so that mimicking is something that continues to get perpetuated because it's normalized. It is normalized in some communities until somebody say, no, let's stop. That's not okay. That is not the way to live. And so I would say from that standpoint, until someone intercedes and jumps in and say, that is not the way that you're to correct your child, or that is not the way that you treat your wife, behavior that has to be modified. So
the reason I'm asking that question just to follow up, because I know my culture, they add corporate discipline into the school system as well. Some places I've seen whereby they add it within marriage based on cultural standpoint. And even though I was living in for 7 years, I asked a lot of questions behind that. They say it's a normal thing being passed down from generation to generation, even while they were under the British rule. That was made to be a systematic way of keeping kids in check compared to what's going on in American education. What I'm trying to understand that there's a limit to that, because I've seen it whereby I've been a student in this thing and they talk about getting a whoop chicken, the cheeseburger, and whatever, and it tastes normal. Now, in the back of my mind, I know it's not normal, but see, that's the only mechanism they have to keep children from going astray. What do you say about that?
Yeah, and again, I think that's a system that begins to introduce a way of conditioning individuals. So yeah, those were things that they thought were appropriate to condition individuals so that they wouldn't behave certain ways. That's a conditioning. It is a conditioning. It's, and that's what that culture believed was the right way to do that. It was previously mentioned in a condition of slavery. There were strict rules of how you disciplined your slave and how you would try to correct a behavior, whether it be, whatever, running or what have you. And so it became a system, but that does not mean that it was right. Whatever that may be, it does not mean that that was okay. So discipline is a technique and a training to adjust maladaptive behavior.
I'm grateful for the answer. Thank you.
Can't hear you.
Yeah, my bad. Book of Genesis. Go ahead, sweetheart.
I would agree with Mr. Wolford, and I actually agree with OG Patrice also. I think that and not to blame slavery for everything, but I do think that it's a contributing factor to how abuse is passed down. It's what happened to our ancestors, and then generation after generation, it's passed down. And I think that usually when discipline is happening, emotions are running high. And because emotions are running high, those abusers tend to go beyond what's, normal or reasonable because they're angry, which is the wrong time, in my opinion, to discipline a child.
And I would agree with that, Genesis. And one thing that the Black community, we don't do is deal with our anger, like manage our anger or go to anger management classes. And when stresses that trigger you, stresses of the world, stresses in your job, stresses in your family, we have so much. And then, of course, during this pandemic, the last 2 years, we have went through much more than any other community because we lost more. Our race of people are the ones that died at a higher percentage than any other race because it affected our race because of a lot of underlying health conditions, because our health disparities and things of that nature. So to pile all of that on to whatever was already going on, and then imagine being stuck in the house with your spouse, your children, for that length of time. Everybody gets stressed out. So stress is a trigger that starts a lot of it. Some people has developed PTSD over the last 2 years because of this. There's things that are unresolved in our community that we don't deal with correctly, like the anger management. We don't like going to therapy. We think it's, even today it's still tabooed. And, Black, we're real good at sweeping things under the rug, as a people and in our community. And that has been to our detriment, unfortunately.
And let me ask you this, Pastor Wolford. So when it comes to a lot of people, when we champion how we grew up, right? And a lot of people sit down around the table and we talk about, and we laugh and we joke, man. I remember when Mama body slammed me, man. I mean, when Mama hit me in the back of the head with a skillet.
Absolutely.
I remember when, what do you, is there a term for that? Or is there a medical condition for that? Is that called something on how we champion the abuse from when we were younger?
No, it's normalized. What we do is we normalize certain things in our culture, in our cultural contexts. And some of that become normalized, particularly with how we and our families and certain cultures have normalized certain behaviors of being body slammed, being slapped. You don't speak unless you're spoken to. When you are in the room, when grown folks are talking, you don't talk. And getting slapped with a racetrack, a house shoe, a brush, all those things. All of us on the phone can probably relate to that. there is no exemption in that. And so the normalization of that becomes a part of who we are in our culture and our community, because that's what we have oftentimes seen around the table. Getting backhand, and you're riding down the street in the car and you say something, you get backhand by, your mama, big mama, what have you. So those things get normalized in our community. So,
well, I'll take it.
Yeah,
I'll take
I'd
it a step
agree.
further.
Even,
those
I
things,
mean, getting whooped with an extension cord until the blood is coming from you. That was normalized in
exactly.
our community.
Yeah.
Even getting whooped with a belt until you wept up. These were things that, a lot of us say, "Oh, I was raised. I got whooped with a belt. I got whooped with a extension cord. I got whooped with, a switch." And we normalize those things. Yes, they make you go get the stick. Remember when grandma and mom when they made you pick the switch off the tree, and you have to come back and let them whoop you with it. It's all those things were
That's
so
How
that's
traumatic.
why I want to take this beyond normalization.
Right.
Yep.
This isn't normalization. This is romanticization.
Exactly.
We romanticize. That takes it to another level. So it's not just sharing war stories. We romanticize. And unfortunately, I've been in too many churches where you'll have the pastor and get up and tell one of those stories, and the people will get up and they'll do their wave and they'll do their amens and hallelujah and thank you Jesus, and then almost like that's what we need to go back to. So this romantic. So unfortunately, with our community, I agree with the doctor when he's talking about this learned behavior, this pattern of behavior that's in our community. But we take it to the next level in that we romanticize it. And then when you add these other stresses to it, like mental illness, I come exactly from that background, exactly what you described. I can honestly say, I come from a home where my mom had mental illness, and that was a major factor for me. I'm the youngest of 5, and we all had to deal with that. One of the movies that I remember growing up, there was this movie with Faye Dunaway. It was called Mommy Dearest. Some of the old heads may know.
Oh, I remember that.
Oh yeah, I remember that. No more wire hangers. No wire hangers.
Kid watching that movie and just thinking that, oh my gosh, that's basically what my life was times 5. And for all my siblings, we all had to endure that. So when you talk about a pattern of behaviors that's been passed down in terms of this is how you discipline your quote discipline your children, added to that the romanticization that comes from our leading institutions like the church, and then when you add on the mental illness on top of that, which again a lot of us we want to shrug under put under the rug. I think this is leading to us having these issues that we're having. But all of this trauma. So again, we as a people, if you want to talk about solutions, we have got to, especially in our places where we get our spiritual development, where we got our teaching, we've got to get this out of our pulpits. This romanticization of corporal punishment to the point where again the hangers and the whips and the get the stem that's just the size of my thumb. We've got to get rid of that, and we have to understand that look, that wasn't necessarily a way to discipline children. And to Mandrell's point, again, I think it's different for every person. I was raised that way, but I didn't allow to pass down to my children, because I have had 3 daughters and I've never whipped them ever. And so I think there's ways to do that, but that is that is learned also. And so, but again, we have to, get rid of the good old day mentality is going to keep us where we are until we start thinking in new ways of doing things, or thinking, this is the white man's teaching that you don't beat your children with belts or whatnot. That's new age modern thinking. We've got to get past that. But our community just wants to hold on to these tropes that are not benefiting us.
Right, and I think we've all dealt with it. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I want to respect Canadian Born on your platform. Do you want me to go first or Canadian Born?
No.
I'll make it real quick, because there's a particular scripture at Christian like to use the most from Proverbs 13:24. Say, "He who spared a rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him promptly." So how do you work around that particular scripture concerning discipline?
You work around it because.
Go ahead.
But make sure you use the second half of that section B of that verse, though. That
Which
section is read the second half of that verse.
It's he who loves him disciplines him promptly.
Disciplines him. He who loves him discipline, and we're talking about discipline. Discipline is instructing who he loves him, teaches and trains him. So there's a second half to that verse.
Guys,
We take it out of context. We only quote that first half.
Exactly.
Sparing the rod, you spoil the child.
But
There's the second half.
But we've already established that largely discipline is interpreted by physical abuse and emotional abuse, psychological abuse. That's how it's interpreted. Particularly in our community, that's the way it's done. Like, I believe in spanking.
Yeah, don't leave out verbal abuse. Verbal abuse too.
Especially that. I believe in spanking children only if the occasion calls for it, and only that. And you don't use things that can actually harm the child. I think that spankings is used for getting your point across and punctuate the severity of that child's actions. Like what you did was so bad, it warrants this. And my thing is, if you have to hit a child more than 5 times, stop. Come on, what are you doing now? You made your point. Yeah. You made your point. Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? And here's another disgusting thing I want to get into. Sir Hales, you proved it. Thank you earlier tonight. And Mr. Bennett hit on it too. Sir Hales, where is this nonsense justified? You said it yourself. It's justified in the church. Mr. Bennett said, and I've heard it in pulpits too.
No. So let me
hold on. My mama such and such this and such and such that. My thing is, this is why that kind of stuff is dangerous. It's used to justify everything. And it's just, I'm passionate about this because I've seen the worst kind that you could see. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, again, I don't know. A switch went off. I can't stand idly by with this. I believe that anyone who abuses their children, you deserve the death penalty. Straight up. That's just how I am about with kids, man. I mean, a child has no choice. A child is innocent. And my thing is, anything that's used to justify that should be getting rid of too.
All right. So, Sir Hill, how do you respond to that?
That includes your religion, Sir Hill.
Yeah, so we're not going to take it there, but I will say this: I do appreciate people like Dr. Wolford, and here's why this is so important. So we talked about we romanticize it. Here's the more dangerous part: is we spiritualize it, and we make it seem like this is what God wants us to do. And that if we do this, then God is pleased with us. And this is why I really appreciate, and I push that preachers, pastors understand psychology, understand this, because for a lot of people, the truth is their spiritual development stops at the church. And so if we can't ensure that after they leave church, they keep on growing, then at least we can do is provide the example at the church that if you come here, we're not going to perpetuate stuff that's simply not good for us. We're not going to perpetuate it just because that's what I said, we perpetuate what we survived, right? We're not going to do this. It's going to stop here. And that starts with addressing the issue. And then here's the thing. We don't throw people away. You throw people away if in extreme circumstances. But a lot of people just didn't know any better. And what I've learned is that people, as they get older, seeing something different, they'll learn as they get older. There's a lot of sad elders who wish they could take back what they did. Now, listen, Mandrell, you got your experience. I got mine too.
There are a lot of elders. You know better.
Yeah,
you went through it as a child. You know better.
Mandrell, listen. Like I want you to listen, right? People go through things in life and they do things that they wish they didn't do. That's the human condition. Everybody has done something that they wish they didn't do. When you know better and you see something different, this is where grace comes in. This is why grace comes in. You see something different and it is up to you to learn and then correct that mistakes and then take it a step further. Teach people how what you did was wrong so that it doesn't happen again. But if we get into the business of throwing people away when they do things like this without giving them an opportunity to change, then we're gonna mess a lot of stuff up.
You know.
But see, the problem with that, Sir Hill,
you know better than to put an iron on the child's body. You know better than to beat a child to that bloody. You know better.
No.
You know better.
No.
There's no excuse
for this.
So if you do that, you deserve to be thrown away and forgotten about.
In no way are we advocating for this. But here's what I'm saying.
Okay, then stop making excuses for them.
Mandrell, I want you to listen. So in no way are we saying, hey, you do this, give you a second chance. We're talking about people who was whipping you with a switch, an extension cord. A lot of them didn't know better. You understand what I'm saying? And that's why a lot of them will tell you, I didn't know better. I wish I would have known. Now, for people who just want to be abusive, that's what they want to do. That's a different topic. I'm talking about a lot of the parents who did that because that's what they saw. That's what I'm referring to.
And let me say this real quick. Mandrell. So
I respect your point. Yeah, I do respect it. I do respect your point of view.
Yeah, when I grew up, we grew up with the same thing. We got extension cord, racetracks, spatulas, broom. It was the saying was, and I think it's a universal saying. Mama will hit you whatever she pick up. Whatever she pick up, she's gonna hit you with it. Right? Look at everybody head shaking. So my mom, she be cooking. Mama, you done cooking? Boy, go in there and sit down now. Mama, hey, you come in here one more time. And next thing you know, you feel a sharp pain at the back of your head. That was a pot, a pan, a stick, anything she put a hand on. So now my kids are growing up, and I take my kids there. My mom don't touch them. There is no extension cords. There's no throwing none of them. She's all lovey-dovey with them. Completely different woman than when we were growing up. This is what Sir Hill is saying. Completely reformed. My kids, she don't whoop my kids. She don't talk to them crazy. She no body slams. I thought my mom was a wrestler until I was 16 years old. She picked you up, body slam, put you in the figure four. I mean, I know y'all.
Somebody put that Hot Wheel track in there, brought back some PTSD.
And the PTSD is, think about the traumatic experience that you went through when you had to go pick your own weapon to get a whooping with. Go outside to that tree.
I remember that. I had to do that too. And I remember having to go pick three so that she can braid them together.
Yeah, and then give you a spanking.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. If I have a child, God willing, I would never do that to them because I know what it's like for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. You know better.
That's exactly
you know better. That's my thing. So if I go out there and I do that to my child, no matter what, I should get the same punishment as any other abuser. I hold myself to that same standard. I am no exception.
So Pastor, what are your after what you're hearing? What are your thoughts?
I'm not hearing it.
What are your thoughts?
I mean, again, I want to be very clear and consistent with our message here is that making a distinction between abuse and discipline. Discipline is for instruction. And when individuals are striking another person for corrective, have they corrected the behavior? Is now the child fearful of them, and have they done damage to that individual? What did they learn from that strike or that beating or that experience, other than having some trauma that is exposed to, that they've been exposed to? Discipline is for training and instruction, so that that individual is now learning something that is going to correct the way that they engage the world. Abuse is not something that is there meant to inform and to instruct. It is abusive. It's dangerous and it's traumatic, and it leaves physical scars, psychological and emotional scars long after the abuse has ended. So we have to be careful to normalize, romanticize these things. We all are guilty of it, and God forgive us for doing so. And so these conversations are healthy for us to pass on and have in conversations, because everyone on this the panel right now. So let's say that we were in a room together and this conversation gets heated. Everybody, a month ago, we all sat 15 million people observing Will Smith go up on stage and slap Chris Rock. Any of us in this room, if we disagree with someone, we do not get the permission to go up and slap each other. That's not permissible. As an adult, no one in this room, if we're sitting here and we disagree with each other, would be okay with the other person coming up and hauling us and slapping us in the face, or taking off their belt and whipping us. We would not approve that as adults. So we justify it because the context, we justify it because you're a big person and this is a little person. We'll justify that type of behavior just because of, age differentials versus instruction.
And also, Doctor, and also the biggest hypocrisy in the church is they are still covering up for the pastors, the deacons, the mothers, all the people that are in the church that is still abusing children, and they know it's happening, and then wants to become public knowledge, they still want to. Well, we just got to pray for the pastor. Now, the pastor that went to jail, the deacon that went to jail, and the congregation still cover a lot of these things up that's happening in the church, and that's the hypocrisy. I watch a channel called Dawson Speaks, and he does nothing but talk about the church and the hypocrisy that goes on. There is sex trafficking going on in the church. There's pedophilia going on in the church. There's physical, verbal, mental, psychological abuse that's going on into the church. And you would have a whole congregation stand behind that pastor or stand behind that abuser and say, well, Lord, we just got to pray for him. We'll pull up money and to bail him out of jail. You know, it's a conditioning that we have as a people that we want to cover up and sweep things under the rug and say everything has got to be about praying for that person and everything. And no, that person deserves to be punished to the full extent of the law. And it is what it is, just like any other civilian or anyone else would do that. And then we tend to want to pick and choose who we want to punish and how we want to punish them. And it starts with the church with that.
And also, OG, you have to factor in.
And I don't disagree.
Hold on one second, Mandrell. Let him respond to that first.
Yeah, go ahead.
So again, with all due respect, again, I want to defend the institution that I love so well, and that is the church. I agree that there are some churches where leadership is horrible and individuals have done some egregious things, but let's not cast a negative aspersion on the entire institution of the church and make that a blanket statement. I would agree with you that there are some individuals, just like any group, any aggregate, there's a bad apple in all of the bunches. Let's not bundle everybody and cast that negative aspersion on the institution of the church. This is God's institution that he created. And yes, there are some individuals, whether it be at a church, at a school, at a supermarket, whatever institution that we want to identify, there are bad individuals because we are fallen people. But I would be remiss if I did not. There are just as good pastors and churches and deacons and elders and choir members who are doing good stuff as there is bad. The bad is oftentimes spotlighted and highlighted, but we can pick of the 350,000 different churches in America, and we can certainly point to that there's many of them that are doing good work, that's changing individuals' lives, that's making a difference. And there's pastors out there who are sacrificing and doing the good work. It's unfortunate, just as you have stated, there are some individuals who do bad things, and yes, they do deserve to be punished, and yes, they deserve to go to jail.
Dr. Man.
Yes, and I want to be clear. When I say that, I don't mean all. I mean some. And I just want to be clear that I think that shouldn't even have to be said, but that is the perception. But I mean some, not all. Just like with the police department situation, I mean some, not all. We know it's not all churches. We know it's not all institutions and pastors, and it just don't even go for Christianity. It go for other religions. Muslims. It's happening. So it's some, not all. So I want to be clear with that.
And Dr. Bennett, we'll get you first, and then we got Nathan Daly in here. So Pastor Wolford, this is Nathan Daly. He is a ex-police officer in Georgia, and so he has probably seen a lot of this going into houses, seeing kids that have been abused or have been, man. I mean, I guarantee he's seen a lot. So let's go ahead with Dr. Bennett first, and then we'll get Nathan in here as well. Go ahead, Dr. Bennett.
Well, I had a question for the doctor. Certainly, I clearly understand the distinction that you're making between abuse and discipline. I get that, but still, what I'm perceiving is that even in your definition, the tool that's being used, you still do not have necessarily a problem with the use of a physical means in order to do that teaching or discipline or what have you. And I guess the question I'm having is, since it seems like there's a lot of people who are unable to make the distinction. If I'm going to use my hand, or if I'm going to use a switch or what have you to make a point or to abuse, the fact that people are having difficulty making the distinction between the two, then should we be advocating that at all? Is a question, because there's so many people who don't know, okay, 2 whips is enough. Okay, you get to 5, that's abuse. Like everybody is not, able to say, okay, I did it 4 times, I'm just going to drop off. So the fact that we even if you're trying to use it for a good means, I admit there's weapons that I got that I deserved. But even in that context, should we, until we can get a handle on knowing the difference or educating people on what is the right way to discipline, then should we be advocating for corporal punishment at all as a normal or normative means of punishment for young children?
And what about
let me respond first. Yeah,
That's a great question.
Go ahead, Pastor Wolf.
Let me point us to when we start making these defining declarations. What we use, law enforcement, those of us who have to report to Child Protective Services, the definition taken from the Texas State Family Code, Section 261, is what we go from a definition. Let me give you the definition of physical abuse, and it has a definition for neglect, but let me just kind of give the context. You can hear how broad this is. Physical abuse, physical injury that results in substantial harm to the child, or the genuine threat of substantial harm from physical injury to a child, including an injury that is at variance with the history of explanation given and excluding an accident or reasonable discipline by a parent or guardian that does not expose the child to a substantial risk harm. Physical abuse also includes failure to make reasonable effort to prevent an action by another person that results in physical injury that results in substantial harm to the child. When you start interpreting this, when a police officer comes to an incident and you being an officer, these lines get blurred. So it's up to the courts to make a distinction in the state Texas Family Code, particularly as it relates to how they're going to interpret that. I'm not advocating that anyone should physically strike a child to correct a behavior. I personally am not advocating that.
Okay.
Because I think
that's why I thought you were still trying to have it like a justification that can be used, but under limited terms. Okay.
No, sir. We use the Texas definition of the Texas State Family Code to make those interpretations. I personally don't advocate physically striking a child to correct a behavior.
All right, thank you for that clarification.
The doctor, I have a question. So what about if you have a household where the parents feel like their discipline is not abuse, but it's the way they discipline? So how would that work in the state of Texas, particularly for where that line is blurred as where the court or the law would see it as abuse, where the parent would say, this is how I discipline my children?
Right. Yeah, because you don't have to spank them to be abusive.
Right. Absolutely.
No, I'm saying, so what if their discipline is a little bit harsh? It's a little harsh, right? Like maybe with a belt or an extension cord. Would the state of Texas law protect that child?
Well, and again, there's many incidents in Texas and in every other state. There's not a state in the United States that says that you cannot physically strike a child. All states say that you can actually physically strike a child. There's not a law in any state that says you cannot.
You froze up.
Bring out this definition. Taken. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you froze up.
You froze up a little bit. You want if you want to go out and come back in on your laptop. Yeah, you can.
I think. Oh, I was going to say, I think he was okay then.
Yeah, go ahead.
For a second.
We can't hear you, doctor, if you're speaking.
No, I'm not. I just paused.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, the definition taken from the Texas State Law Code. When you start reading and interpreting this, the explanation given is talk about reasonable discipline by a parent. That's a broad thing. Reasonable discipline by a parent or guardian that does not expose the child to a substantial risk to harm.
And that's what I believe in. Because like I said, when I was in Afghanistan,
it's going to come.
Okay, so I think so what if a parent disciplines their child by whooping them and they whoop them with an extension cord and there's clearly webs and maybe blood, and the police is called. So in that incident, would the state of Texas, would the police department consider that as abuse and, possibly arrest the parent? Or how would that situation go? And I know you were specifically talking about Texas, so I'm just trying to define where that line is.
I think in the incident that you're quoting, I would say yes, that would be considered abuse because again, making reason. So here, this would include an injury that is at variance with the history of explanation given. Is that there would be results that the child has been harmed. The results are that there's blood. The results are that there's webs there. So you would see identifiable marks on this child. So I think according to Texas state law code, that person should be arrested and charged with abuse.
Okay, thank you for answering.
Right, and so we got ex-police officer here in Georgia, Pastor Wolford, Nathan Daly. He is here. So Nathan, what do you have any questions for Mr. Wolford or anything you want to add as well?
I first let me just say congratulations, Black Man Unfiltered, for that
Appreciate
1K,
you,
brother. So I was looking for the super chat. I see you still got the process going. So.
Yeah, the process still going. Yeah.
That's what's up. Shout out to the panel. And who's the doctor? I want to make sure I address it.
In the middle, right in the
middle.
middle.
All right. What's up, Doc? How you doing? So I mean, I missed a little bit, but I came in. It got a little passionate. Mandrell, who's doing cartwheels about kids getting beat.
I saw some things in Afghanistan that no human being should ever do to another, let alone a child. And you being an ex-police officer, I imagine you saw some of the same things.
Oh man!
So go ahead.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, go ahead, Nathan. Tell us about it, brother.
I would say, I think you guys probably already covered this, but abuse is not just physical. So for officers, we look at the emotional, we look at the overall well-being of a child before, when we make a decision. And when it comes to the type of injuries, if we're talking welts, I haven't taken a parent to jail because of welts, but I did document. And it's discretion. It's an officer's discretion. You're looking at the totality of an entire situation when you make a decision. Welts alone is not enough for me to take a parent to jail. I look at the circumstances and everything. We don't want to discourage parents from disciplining their children. Unfortunately, it is common sense discipline, though. You come in, you look at a situation, you can tell abuse. It's very obvious. I will say this though. That's OG Patrice. It's the first time seeing you cammed up. So let me say this. She asked a good question because one of the things I come across a lot of times is different cultures, and cultures come to this country. Shout out to our immigrants. They come to this country and they still bring their customs on how they deal with and discipline their kids. I've had a situation where a gentleman was disciplining his daughter, and no one spoke to me when I showed up. I couldn't get any information. No one in the community. It was an Ethiopian community. No one said anything. They wouldn't talk about what happened. It was a passerby that reported it. The wife didn't say anything. The daughter didn't say anything, and the father absolutely didn't say anything. So when we're going to different people's communities, they have their own ways of doing it, and obviously, there's situations where it goes too far. And we can make an arrest based off of that. So I definitely agree with that. But I think that's a very, very good question. What I have seen, of course, I've seen a lot. I've seen abuse that transcends physical abuse. We're talking about putting kids in closets and closing the door, putting kids in dark attics. And then they repeat and say something to a teacher, and then the teacher then has to report it. And you look at what that psychological abuse from that child, right? From doing something like that. So you don't even have to actually physically strike a child for them to go through something traumatic. So again, the other half of that is a child's mental health. So you can abuse a child mentally. I've had cases where parents would starve the kid because they were bad. That was a form of discipline. They wouldn't feed the child, right? So your brothers and sisters are getting cereal and stuff, and then you're not getting anything because you acted up or whatever. So, you know, and that kid's, he's like, man, I'll take a whooping over not eating. And so it does take many different forms. I never discourage parents from disciplining their children. I give them the rule though, because I've had to, you know, talk to a lot of parents and domestic violence courses and things like that. I said, if you bruise, you lose, right? Like that's kind of the measurement. If you bruise, you lose. Let that be, you know, a good measurement tool for you to understand. You need to be mindful of the amount of force that you use, because every officer is going to look at it differently. If I'm going into the Black community, I understand, you know, how we look at certain things. So I'm a little bit more understanding versus when you might have a white officer or a Hispanic officer that goes to a scene. They're not, again, this is the beauty of having people who reflect your community, because when they're assessing a crime or they're assessing a situation, they're doing it from an understanding of, they know the culture, right? They know how this group operates. You know, it's the same thing when you go into a Hispanic community, they discipline different than Black folks. Asians discipline different. Africans discipline different. And so when you understand the cultures and you're going into their homes, you know, you have to be mindful. I know when I'm going into a Muslim community, I know I have to talk to the man, right? Regardless of the crime, it's that respect. So when you understand those things, like that is so important. And so, you know, those are the different things that you see just kind of over time. I had a case, I'll just end with this story, where the son called 911 because the father had punched him and kind of knocked him down. And so when I showed up at the scene, the son was, you know, he was crying. He's 18 years old. And he had kind of bucked up at the mom, right? He kind of back talked her, got in her face, like real disrespectfully. And then the father checked him. Now the father lives there, right? So the father comes to me. He's scared. He's nervous because he thinks he's going to go to jail because he hit his son. You know, he's like, I punched him twice in the chest. And then he fell to the ground. He was, you know, kind of coughing up air, you know, that kind of thing. And when I spoke to the father, you know, he was like, yeah, my son was disrespectful. He looked like he was going to try to hit his mom. You know, he's feeling himself. So now I look at the son, I look at the father, right? And I'm like, Dad, good job. You know, good job. Keep it up. Keep up the good work. And I went to the son. I said, listen, as long as you're under this person's roof, your dad's roof, your parents' roof, you're going to show them respect, you know? And I was just like, you know, you don't disrespect your mother. That's unacceptable. And I said, it's a good thing that you have a father that can discipline you, because if he wasn't here, then it'd be me, right? And other officers that would have to discipline you. You know, so we had a good little talk, but it was just the fact that the father feared. He had so much fear, like he almost made his mind up that he was going to go to jail. You know, a lot of parents don't know what level of discipline. And there's a myth in our community, in the Black community, that if you discipline your kids, you're going to go to jail, right? That's just not true. It just needs to be common sense discipline, in my opinion. But again, the other problem with that too, according to the doctor, is that, you know, every officer is going to look at things differently when you arrive on the scene. So that discretion is a big deal.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, Sir Hill, you still there? Sir Hill? Okay, so Sir Hill, I'm gonna put you on the big screen because I need you to say it. Go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, this show's about to take a turn.
All right, guys. So listen, last week, Pastor Wolford, there was a question. And I want to ask you this question because I know you're going to have some good words about it. If a man is about to get married and he's about to marry a woman that has children, and let's say the child is between 12 and 14 years old, should the stepfather be allowed to discipline that child?
So again, I think, you know, that couple need to have some rules of engagement, particularly as it relates to how they are going to agree to raise their children. Mm-hmm. So those conversations need to happen between that man and that woman before they get married, so that they have an understanding and establish what their rules of engagement will be as it relates to, do they agree to discipline, the same type of discipline techniques going into the marriage. I am fearful of situations where a man and a woman bypass those conversations, and they go ahead and get married, or they move in and they start cohabitating, and all of a sudden, the child and the man or the woman gets disrespected, and so they may have two different ways in which they want to try to agree to discipline or correct that child, and then now you have a relationship in distress. If a man and a woman are going to make some decisions to live together, they need to have those conversations beforehand. If she or he has children, they need to understand rules of engagement and be on the same page of how we're going to raise our children collectively before you start moving in together and decide to co-parent.
So and to add to that question, so that should be it. So if the woman, if the young lady or the woman says, "Hey, listen, you know what? I don't. My son's 13 years old. He's been this way for 13 years. I don't think you should come in and do that. Should that be a deal breaker? Should the man just remove himself from the relationship?
I think so. If there's already conflict,
I like this faster. I like
if there's already conflict with you all not being able to agree to how you're going to raise these children, bro or sister, you need to back out of that relationship immediately, because that's immediately going to cause turmoil in the relationship.
Wow. Anybody got any follow-up questions on that one? I know.
I want to say I agree, because a lot of times if the discussion is not had prior to whoever moves in with who, or they get married, and then the guy tries to do it, a lot of times the first thing the woman is say, "Don't put your hands on my child. You can't discipline my child." And that has happened a lot with that type of situation. And then the child will sometimes go to their father, who's outside of it, and tell their father, he put his hands on me, and and then there's a whole, now you bringing that into it, and it's an argument between the adults. It just gets messy. So I agree with you, doctor. You should have the conversation prior to, but if you can't come to a happy medium with how to discipline the child, then absolutely somebody needs to leave, because it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse, especially when you have a child that's that age, and then they going through the teenage years. A lot of times they go through rebellious. A lot of times the child don't even want the man to set rules and regulations in the household that he must abide by, because he's so used to it just being him and his mom. It's like, well, who are you to come in all of a sudden and try to tell, me what to do when my mom was letting me get away with this? But the man might be saying, but no, this is not how it should be done. And I'm here now, and I'm setting these rules and regulations down. I've had a talk with your mom, and this is what it is. Now, if the woman don't agree to that, which a lot of times, I've seen some sisters that have lost men because of this. They have literally lost their man because of that. They didn't want no one to discipline their child. They didn't want anyone to, in any shape or form, not even punish, like taking away a favorite game, video game or whatever, like nothing. And I've seen women lose their man over that, and it's sad.
Incidentally, OG Patrice, a statement. My last relationship, she was a single mother, and this is expressly why we broke up. We're talking about marriage and everything, and before I even proposed, I had this conversation with her, and it lasted, and it was a fantastic relationship. And we had several different conversations about it, because I was really trying to get her to see reason, but she just, for whatever reason, would not compromise on this subject. Just at all, just unwilling to bend. So at the end of the day, I had to make a tough decision. It was tough, but I had to say that this isn't going to work, And so we broke up because of this. She didn't want me to discipline her child in any way, and so
if a man is coming into the household playing the role of a stepfather, playing the role of the leader, the breadwinner, provider, securer, protector, then that comes along with it automatically. And that's what a lot of our women need to understand and get. When I got married to my husband, my son was a teenager, but we talked about it. Same thing. I had to sit down and talk to my son, because he was like 16-ish. And he was just used to it being me and him. And he was see, and that's the thing with boys, especially. They are thinking at that point that they are the man of the house. And a lot of women raise their sons as they husbands. Oh, you're the man of the house now. What are we doing, women? No, they not. And then you get a man, and there's a problem when the man wants to be the leader. Then there's this dispute between the son and your man, and then you're in the middle of that crap. So you have that conversation out there. My son, look, this is what it is.
And also, you have to understand that it's natural for a son when he comes of age to challenge the father. At some point in time in his life, it is our nature for the son to challenge the father. And it's the duty of the father to tame the son. This is one of the big reasons why women can't raise boys to be men, because there's that thing going.
So let's get okay. So how do you feel about that, Pastor Wolford?
Which part of that?
Does it come to does it come a time where a man must tame, whether stepson or real son? It comes a time where they must tame their sons.
Oh, in most instances, when young men start smelling themselves, or when young women start smelling themselves, there's the conflict between the young lady and the mama, and there's a conflict between the young man and the father. We see that all the time. So it's in both instances where parents have to make sure that there's a clear delineation: who's the mom and who's the daughter, and who's the father and who's the son. We see that in many instances, all cultures. That's just part of growing up. Young man starts smelling himself. I remember clearly the day when my son thought he was grown.
And you had to tame him, right?
What'd you do to him, Pastor?
What'd you do, Pastor?
He said, I struck him with the Bible one time. He put that Genesis on.
And see, that's what Nathan Davis saw when he went to that house.
Go ahead.
He's now in law school, his first year. He's understanding the Texas Family Penal Code.
Hey, he said he gonna get that revenge. That's what he said.
Right.
He said there's no statutes of limitation for that domestic abuse.
And so that's what Nathan saw when he walked into that house. That's how he interpreted it. It's like the son was smelling himself.
Absolutely.
The father's job was to tame him.
Absolutely.
And his father, good shot in the chest.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
He gave him that 2-piece.
Right.
Who was it? Wasn't it? What pastor was that? The little one. That always be on everybody's song, but they don't make no music. What's his name?
Kurt Franklin.
That's his name. Exploiting God's people.
Right. All the people say.
Kirk is my friend and my brother. He's a good dude.
Oh, shout out to Kirk. But
all the people say.
Well, he had a situation, right? Or there was like an abusive allegation, wasn't there? He cursed his son out.
Yeah, but that was
Yeah, all right.
Well, it's something else going on between him and his son now. It's some other stuff.
No, it's not between him and his son. His son got caught up in something on his own.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
His friend on the panel now. We can't be just throwing the man on the bus.
But I will say this, now, Sir Hale, I need you one more time, Doc. You ready?
Uh-oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, this show is about to take a turn.
So, Pastor Wolford, how do you feel about domestic discipline when a husband has permission to discipline his wife?
So define domestic discipline.
Domestic discipline. Hold on, let me read it to you. I got it pulled up here. Domestic discipline most commonly refers to as a practice of fully consensual corporal discipline between two competent adult partners who are married.
So so can we reverse it just so the context is clear? Can a woman discipline her husband? Is that what you're asking me?
No, it doesn't work the other way around.
But he didn't. The definition doesn't declare gender.
It does.
Okay, hold on. Let me read further. Let me read further. It says, where some approve a husband's discipline of their wives, and also in some cases the wife and also in some cases the wife punishes her husband in return as well for bad behavior.
No, not with that one. Well, that part, no.
Yeah, Mandrell. What's your thought now, Mandrell?
Wait a minute.
It just put the
Guys, I
Let's be
saw I
clear.
saw a
Be clear.
video.
Be clear.
I saw a video that went viral of a man. The man had cheated on his wife. She gave him a choice between them divorcing or he take 25 licks on his naked derriere with a thick paddle. And of course he chose the thick paddle, right? And she literally, it went viral. It's unbelievable. She took the paddle, it showed it. He had his pants down with his naked derriere showing, and she took that paddle and gave him 25 whops on his naked derriere.
So okay, so going to Pastor Wolford real quick. What do you think about domestic discipline?
No comment.
So no comment. No comment. No comment is a comment.
So okay, so Sir Hell, what do you think?
As a member of the clergy, I'm going to follow the lead of the great doctor, and no comment.
Oh, see now, y'all got to come on. Y'all, somebody got to answer this.
I'll answer. I'm not with it. I'm not with it in any fashion,
Dr.
male
Bennett?
or female.
No domestic discipline of any kind. But again, in some churches, in some areas, that was, something that a man had to. I mean, even, go back to the sister Shahrazad Ali, which everybody's been talking about in these spaces. When did she get famous? It's when she had that famous line, an open hand slap in the mouth, that a husband has the right at some time when she gets out of order for him. That's what blew her up totally. When she had everything else, people were like, oh, okay. But when she came out with that, that's when she got the heat when that comment came out. So there is a train of thought that out there. Hopefully it's not as much as it used to be, but that was something that people would, in some circles, co-sign. I do not.
I agree with what she said up until that part, and I know that it was.
That's when the sisters jumped off.
I know that it was predominantly in the Muslim community that that happened a lot, and probably still is. I've heard a lot of stories. I have some Muslim friends that talked about when that came out, that was the norm
I
for
remember
in our culture.
Back in the day, In Living Color ran with that.
They did. They skit with her when she was sitting there with the interview. An open hand slapping them out. I remember that. Yeah.
It was like that was the answer to every question.
Right. It was. Yeah, I'm not with it, man. You shouldn't be hitting your wife.
No way.
Your wife shouldn't be hitting you.
Escalate to violence, depending on the type of person you with. Like you hit them, okay. You don't know what you're gonna get in return.
Exactly.
So
And I mean, look, we were talking about it earlier about Middle Easterns and how they, domestic and corporal punishment is for their wives. If their wives uncover themselves, if their wives get great, they punish the wives for that. If they go through a divorce, a lot of times the wife gets punished for that. If she leaves and takes the children, they punish the wives, and some unto their deletion.
Yeah, but the wives over there are literally property.
Right. That's what I was saying about the difference in the way, the punishment is for the wife and the children are different, culturally and biblically, because they strictly goes by these strict kind of biblical stuff. Like over there, if you steal, they still believe in cutting your hands off, and different things like that. So they still believe in a lot of the Old Testament law.
The same applies in Africa as well, so it's no different. I've seen some of these things whereby the husband actually threw out the wife of the home because she didn't do her duty, and the mom and pop of the wife is begging the husband to take her back because taking back a woman who got kicked out of the house is considered a disgrace to the family name. So when you see that in a cultural environment, you kind of like scratching your head like, okay, this don't happen in the U.S., so why is it happening here? So you gotta get a deeper understanding behind that. And that should be known, not only in my country, you look at many African countries across, some have similar cultures, some have a little to the extreme. So I can't say they shouldn't do that. It's being passed down for many generations.
Yeah,
So you
just
can
like
imagine
in
that.
the Asians, with the Asian community, their corporal punishment for their wives if they commit certain sins or whatever against the culture is pretty much like the same thing. Theirs is pretty brutal as well. So yeah, it definitely is a difference culturally, spiritually, in the way the discipline and the punishment versus the type of discipline that is given. So it's different
But
from
I think it's
in the
another
United
reason.
States.
Right. Let
I
me
think
get
it's
Can I
another
just
reason you need to watch what be careful what you're asking for. Because I've
right,
seen a
right.
lot of
yeah
comparisons, people saying, "Oh, we need to get like this culture or that one," but you don't consider all those other things that go with it. So be careful what you ask
Yeah,
for when you're
and,
comparing yourself.
and
That's a
going back to
fantastic
going back
point.
to Pastor Wolford. So
and,
what are your
can I
thoughts
just
on?
okay, let's
Go ahead. Go ahead.
go ahead. So let me just ask us just to be careful in all these conversations not to stereotype. I know there's many different cultural contexts that we will come into contact with, and not all of those communities that we speak of have those across the line disparaging thoughts that we have about their culture is who's doing what. So let's be careful, because you can go to various Asian cultures and that's not the case. You can go to militaristic countries and that's not the case, or even going to the continent of Africa. There's different things in different communities. So let's be very careful not to stereotype any particular culture or community. We know in disciplining, when we again talk to ourselves and who we are, we can speak from our context today. Many of us would say yes or no, but let's just be careful not to stereotype. There's a great book, the Some of Us, that talks about the
Yes,
importance of making sure we give value to all of our cultures and communities and who we are. So let's be careful not to stereotype any type of abuse or neglect in saying what we have heard, because when you go to other communities, some of that stuff is just not true.
Now, I will say this to you. One time you did a sermon, but before the sermon, I think it was during Domestic Violence Awareness Month or something, and you did a sermon, Pastor Wolford, where you played this video of this man's wife abusing him. Do you remember that? It was a while back where the wife was pouring hot water on him. She was sticking cigarettes to him, and you played it right before you spoke. Do you remember that video? So so I don't want people to think that it only happens to women, because men are here getting it too. And so if you can, Pastor Wolford, give us some insight on statistically on women and men when it comes to domestic violence. Like, what have you seen? What have you dealt with?
Yeah, yeah. Well, certainly. Again, we just want to make sure that we don't, paint with this broad brush, just saying that this happens on the one culture, one community. And oftentimes it's thought of that men are the only ones who are the abusers and women are the only one getting abused. But there's lots of men that we come into contact with now that are being abused. And the numbers are staggering. Men don't step up to the plate. I come into contact and counsel lots of men now who are being abused by their spouse. And men don't speak up. Men won't speak up because it's a shame. They are ashamed, and when they're thought to be weak, or they're thought to believe that somehow you're sorry because you're allowing your mate, your female mate, to dominate you or overpower you. The statistics on that were, at the time that we were doing some of that research, it was about 14% of men that were polled said that they had actually endured some physical abuse by their partner.
And let me can I piggyback off of the doc as well, because I think that segues really good into this conversation about domestic abuse, because I was a strong advocate against it when I patrolled. I was a part of a domestic violence unit. And when they look at it, they of course they change the terms now to intimate partner violence, right? That's like a new term they coined because at this point, right? So everything's looking more like the Book of Genesis now when it comes to relationships. So it's one in three women experience intimate partner violence from the most recent polls. And then also 1 in 10 men experience intimate partner violence. But like you said, Doc, that's underreported grossly. I think it's more probably 1 in 5, I believe.
Yeah.
And because a lot of times when I would do investigate and go into homes, the men are taking a lot of abuse and they're not doing anything about it. And so they just don't call. You know, you'll go to a home because someone else may have called the police, and you show up and you see this man is running away from his wife in his own home, you know, and so he's locking himself in the bedroom, he's locking himself in the basement, or he's not coming home, he's leaving early because he's constantly trying not to engage in a physical altercation, right? Like we'll walk, you'll have guys walk, their back is turned, they get slapped in the back of the head, or something is thrown at them, and they don't react or respond to it, but that is a form of abuse, you know. And I think sometimes there's a misconception that because, you know, we're men, we're supposed to be tough, we're just supposed to handle it and deal with it, or a woman's words don't have any meaning, but they do. To men, it hurts, right? Words hurt. We're not, you know, we're not robots. I used to tell women that in a class I would teach. Men are not robots, and just because we don't respond the same way doesn't mean that what you're saying is not a form of abuse, right? And so again, there's this misconception that men are just supposed to take it and deal with it because we're men. And a lot of times when you see men react, it's after it has built up, and then they respond in the form of violence, which is not justified whatsoever at all, right? There's no justification for anyone touching anybody. And so, but again, that is the numbers. And even when it comes to deletion, I guess we'll say it that way. If we talk about our community in general, the Black community, unfortunately, 90% of the women who are deleted, it's from an intimate partner, right? So some form or fashion, it's either an ex lover, a spouse, some guy, you know, you may have dated and kind of shoot off or whatever. It's always a closely related. Unfortunately, that's like a big problem with just women nationwide in general. And then I think that's nationwide stats. In the Black community, it's 50% of the Black women who are deleted by an intimate partner. But nationwide for all women, it's 90% of the women who are deleted are it's done by an intimate partner. So, you know, domestic's a real thing. You know, you gotta choose.
I think
so. Real quick, somebody, Ace Butterfly in the chat, wanted Pastor Wolford to answer this question. She said, "I don't doubt male abuse." She said, "Can Charles expand on what type of abuse men are experiencing?"
All of the major ones: physical, emotional,
verbal,
sexual, neglect.
Whoa.
So emotional abuse is a large one where, yeah, verbal, exactly. So inflicting some sort of mental, emotional injury on a person and causing them some sort of permanent trauma where, you know, the situation of that particular, it's sustained mental anguish and emotional injury over a period of time that's observable by them. So that's one that men don't oftentimes report, is the emotional abuse, because men are taught to just kind of take it in, to suck it up. And we're finding in counseling and in therapy with a lot of men, they're when we start looking at the diagnoses and start seeing them on a regular basis, we are seeing that they're emotionally abused. Physical, we can see the scars and you can see some of that, but the emotional and the neglect by an intimate partner, where that situation that they're exposed to substantial risk. You think a grown man would, that they should be able to be able to avoid that, but there's, situations where men, are experiencing all the levels of abuse that, other categories, both women and men, sexual abuse as well.
Well, and so before we get into that, welcome my boy here tonight. The Great Pill Podcast is in the building tonight. What's going on, Great Pill?
Hey. I was multitasking my butt off. I just finished a stream and I'm sitting there responding to most people in their messages. So it was a really, really good conversation.
So so go into this sexual abuse for men.
Yeah.
I want to hear more. Please.
That was my question.
Sexual abuse is sexual conduct that's harmful to the individual, both mental, emotional, where they're forced into sexual coercion and social. The stereotype of men is that all men are sexual, that all men want sex all the time. Where there are some men who feel forced to have sex with their partner, and feel as if they cannot say no. Not every man's libido is high as most people want them to think. Those are stereotypes, and so aggravated sexual assault on a partner who, you know, a man saying no is no for a man, just as no is for a woman.
So do you see this a lot?
It is being reported a lot more than what people would ever imagine.
Wow.
Listen, you guys will be. Hold on, who's about to go? Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say. You'll be surprised what goes on in people's houses. You know, men are being. You know, you have some women who are. What do you call them? They're the they're like
sadomasochists.
Yes, the little 50 Shades of Grey type of women, and they'll have these brothers tied up upside down, hanging over a fence. You know, and so you know it happens. You know, there was. Listen, I'll tell you the homes I've been in. Right?
I'm not trying to lay it. You said tied up.
Yeah, but you know what's funny though? The way he like, and I'm not trying to pick y'all two, but you know, you Mandrell and you got a little snicker and giggling, that put pressures on men too. So when they have those issues, they don't step out the light and report it. They don't say anything to their friends and buddies, so they continue to allow it to happen.
Exactly.
And honestly, it's just a form of a way to emasculate men. It starts verbally, then it moves to emotionally and mentally and sexually. And because the thing about women is, for the most part, we don't think, you know, we know that we are not stronger than a man. So we start with the words first. We start with the hurting words, the demeaning words. That's a form of the emasculation. And then it escalates when they see that the man doesn't do anything about it. And then it becomes aggressive with the woman sexually, right? Like in the bed, she's demanding things that was out the norm of their normal, sexual relations that they would have. And you're right. It's sort of like it's another way of emasculating the man, especially if she's doing things sexually to degrade him and emasculate him as a man by treating him in such a way. Those are all forms of ways that women can manipulate and emasculate men in that way. Then it goes to the physical part. Absolutely. Especially when the man not striking them back, the man not hit. Go ahead.
What you smiling for, Genesis? I see you trying to hold it back. Huh?
You muted.
Genesis.
I am not trying to hold it.
I see it. I can feel it. I can feel it.
I am not beating any men. I'm not beating any children. So
we didn't say you.
We need to stop the perception that every time we talk about something, we think we're saying all. It's not all. It's some.
Thank you.
In all spectrums. It's not all. It's some. Let's be grown here. Let's be mindful. We're not talking about all. But I am not talking about you, Genesis. I'm just talking about in general, because we keep saying, let's not do this and let's not do that. And it's some, not all.
But we have to go ahead, Black Man. You was about to say something.
No. I was go ahead, because E-Man had a question. I'm gonna bring E-Man up. I'm gonna back out, let E-Man in and ask his question real quick. But go ahead.
There's two types of things that I've seen men who want that, right? They want that type of abuse as well. That's one factor. And then I've also seen it where women have used it as a way to, like OG Patrice said, to emasculate, but they're doing it as a sense of trying to use their power that was probably at one point in time taken from them from childhood. So, when I've interviewed women about these topics, what they would say is, you dive into their childhood is when you see a lot of trauma where they themselves have been abused sexually. And this is by a man. And then they use that, right? It manifests into them wanting to be dominant over men in the bed. It's a very interesting dynamic, what happens. And they'll tell you, and it'll all start they don't connect the pieces, but then you start to understand, I had a case where a lady went too far with her job, right? This is her job. People will come to her and she would act out these sexual fantasies where the man is being emasculated and mistreated. Like that's part of their arrangement. Well, he got hurt, right? Like she went too far. He didn't say the safe word loud enough, right? And he's in the hospital. And so now I go to the hospital to interview him. And I said, sir, how did you get this toilet brush? right? Explain to me. So of course, you know, they're going to call the police to investigate because that's not normal behavior, right? He didn't get it in there himself. And so, you know, how embarrassing, right? As a man, you got to tell another man like how this whole thing transpired, right? You paid for this. But I have to now investigate because I have to make sure it's not criminal. You know, I have to make sure it's consensual, you know? And so very interesting situation that, you know, some men do put themselves in. And at the same time, there are some women who get a joy out of it as well. I've seen that. I've seen gerbils put into bags and sent up there as well. You know, you guys, people get extremely creative. You will be surprised what goes on.
And you know how they label it now on dating sites, submissive. When you see the word from a man that's saying submissive, oh boy, yeah, that's the key way for a woman to do whatever she thinks she can and want to do to that man to emasculate him. That's the new word, submissive. They trying to be safe with it on the dating sites and when they say it, but when I tell you some of the vulgar stuff, oh yeah, I just want to say that.
So we got E-Man in here. E-Man just got in from church. So that means, look, we got two. Listen, man, this almost going. Listen, we got two preachers in here. We got E-Man just coming from church. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, we got
Dr. Emmanuel Jenkins. Go ahead, Pastor.
So go ahead, E-Man. Ask your question. He full of the Holy Spirit. Go ahead, Doctor.
I do got a question because we got a law enforcement officer on, so he gonna be able to tell us from the law point of view. And we got some married people on too. So do we believe that? I guess. What's the safe word for you two? Do we believe that your partner can, in the confounds of marriage, that your partner can take advantage of you?
Doesn't it say that the bed can't be defiled, Pastor? What we got?
I want to make sure I understand your question though. Like, what do you mean?
Can a husband, you know, ape his wife?
Yeah, so that's kind of where, not that specifically, but when we start talking about marriage, are we saying that it's something that, I just, man, you just got there to the big one. I don't want to get you strike already.
Yeah. Hold on. So basically, can a man take advantage of his wife in a physical way? That's physical abuse, basically, sexually.
Okay, so the reason I'm asking because can makes it seem like we're permitting it. So I think it's more appropriate to say, does this happen? I think it does happen, and I think if she says no, just because you're married, you don't get a chance to override her and her body just because you're married. And vice versa as well.
What does the Bible say? What does the scripture say in reference to marriage and the
Bible says something totally different. That's what I'm trying to get y'all. But
what does the Bible say though? What does the Bible say?
Quote it because they've been reading this.
We can go as deep as you guys want to get into this.
Yeah, go ahead, Pastor Wolford, and
the net of it is that's a form of abuse. If your partner is saying no, you don't have the right to use the Bible as legislation for why you can violate. We don't do that.
Legislation.
But that's the word of God, Sir Hale.
Interpretation is necessary.
So hold on. So are you saying that? Well, I guess that makes sense why people believe in divorce. I guess because if a woman just decide to cut it off, your only option to sound like is to walk away and divorce. Then, since that's how y'all guys feel, is that what y'all saying?
Okay, yeah, Wolford, go ahead. Oh, you muted.
Wolford said he ain't signed up for this. Y'all about to.
Wolford says no comment.
So what does it mean before you go? Doc, before you go, what the scripture though, and I haven't seen this myself, but and I'm gonna look it up right now as we're talking. But I've heard a statement saying that the bed can't be defiled. What is the interpretation of that? If I'm quoting it right?
Yeah, he'll be back in a second.
Yeah, I love to get into that. What we're talking about, the bed is being undefiled. That means when you become one with your spouse, there's no sin in that. Like the sin of fornication, the sin that you would have before that, there is no sin there. A lot of people take that scripture to mean, hey, let's bring a third party in here. Let's do what we want to do. That's not what it meant. That's not what it means.
I'm clear.
Well, hold on, but so
Hold on, here you go. Hold on, let me answer real quick. So,
Oh, I got
sorry,
one. I got one for E-Man as well. If we want to go here, I got one question for you as well.
Let's learn it. Let's go.
So where they asking Pastor Wolford, where in the Bible? Because Sir Hill just gave a great one. Where in the Bible does it say? Well, E-Man was saying in the Bible it says something different about a man and his wife sexually. The bed is undefiled. That's what
he says. Her body is his. You know,
his body is
belongs to
hers.
her. That's what it says.
1 Corinthians 7.
So
but the fundamental scripture is to do unto others as you want them to do unto you. And if you wouldn't want to be violated, then you don't do that to somebody else.
Well, no. What I'm saying is, so we become one, right? So we got this theory that it's two people become one, right?
Uh-oh.
And then so it sounds like, but we only have. I'm not going to even go there. Thank you,
Sir
Lord.
Hill?
No,
Go there, E-Man. Go there.
Before we go there, ladies and gentlemen, this show done took a third turn.
So
turn off the cliff.
Let's go here. If you don't mind, let's go here.
This is the number one thing I hear.
E-Man, you need to say some stuff. I got a couple questions for you, sir.
Let him finish, Sir Hill. Let him finish.
Oh yeah, we're gonna finish. It's gonna be a good one.
Let him finish first.
Mortal Kombat. So listen. So are there some things that you're not willing to do?
Say it again.
Are there some things that you're unwilling to do in the bedroom?
Well, be careful.
Yes.
You're unwilling?
Yes.
What if wife wants to do it?
There's some things that I'm unwilling to do in the bedroom.
Are you willing to do?
Huh?
What if wife wants to?
You better listen carefully, man.
Listen carefully.
I hear you say, like, let me ask this question. I know everybody want to jump in. Let me and Sarah have a dialogue.
Yeah, it's two men talking.
All right. So what if wife want to do it?
Yep.
I feel like a man should lead the relationship in all aspects.
That ain't the question. What if your wife want to do it?
I have the right to overrule her.
Well, but you're one.
I get it. But we still got to talk about
it. See,
hold on. Let me respond.
We use the scripture when it benefits us.
No, hold on. Let me
something
finish.
that we want, then we want to be leadership.
No. So see, the thing is, what we do with the Bible is we still try to act like it's not a structure of how we actually are. Like it's a structure. Hold on. It tells us. Hold on. It tells us. No, I'm saying it tells us that men. Now, I'm not talking about like the extra stuff, right? I'm just talking about basic sex.
I gave you a specific scenario.
Hold on. I know, but listen.
Some things you wouldn't do. You said no. My question to you was, if your wife wanted to do it, what would you do?
But
you said, I'm the leader.
No, listen. I feel like men have the right to make decisions women can't. That's why we cover them. But that's a whole nother subject.
Oh.
What I am trying to say is this right here. I'm just like, okay, when you start talking about doing something that's different than we just talking about the basic sex, right? I don't think I have the right.
I'm not.
No, I am.
Check your DMs.
Listen, hear me out. I don't have the right to tell my wife no if she want to have sex. It's supposed to be vice versa.
That's not the question. My question is there something specifically that you would say, that's off limits?
Sound like checkmate to me.
Right.
No, because what Sir Hill's not doing is, I get what he's saying.
This is called a spoil. I want to speed it up because this is very simple. There are
Sir Hill, listen. Okay. The point that I'm trying to make you understand is, I'm saying that everybody should have rights to say, hey, I don't want to go past this line. But when it comes down to sex, it's crazy that we tell people when it comes down to sex.
That is not what we're talking about.
That's what I've been talking about. You're trying to change it, but that's what I've been talking about. I get what you're saying.
When you started off and said, we're one, right? That's, we're one, right?
But you didn't let me finish my statement. I was halfway through a statement before you interrupted that whole statement.
So that's what it was.
It was.
If that was the case, you wouldn't have said men are the leaders. So we get a lead. You wouldn't have said that, right?
See what you're doing is you're controlling the conversation and not letting me completely state the full context of what I'm saying. I ain't gonna go there. But yeah, I can take.
This is what you call. I see what you're saying. And I'm gonna hone in on those points because if it's not good for her, it can't be good for you. So it's very simple. If it's something that you wouldn't like, her body being mine not only means I get to do what I want with it, it means I'm responsible for it for her body as well. There's a sense of responsibility, not just for gratification. I want to make that point clear. If that's not what you're saying, then great. But that's what I was reading from what you were talking about.
That's because you cut me off. What I was saying was this right here. When it comes down to, like, if it's been something that a line been drawn and she said, hey, I never want to do this, for example, that is off limits. But I don't think that in relationship we can turn it on and off and say, oh, you can have me this week, but I'm gonna go 3-4 months off without having you. That's the point that I was making before I got cut off.
That's what it was. Okay.
But, okay. And so let me ask you this, E-Man. So what if she does do that? What if she says, E-Man, you said, E-Man, you can do this week. And then the next week you enjoyed that. And the next week she says, no, I'm not doing that no more. But you really enjoy it. What do you do then?
Well, I think it's a form of, when we start talking about like witchcraft, for example. What? If you listen, I believe that it's I believe that it's a form of witchcraft if a man or woman is holding sex back to get their way or to manipulate a person. I believe that is a form of witchcraft.
So hold on. So Pastor Wolford, respond to that.
Mandrell, you don't even believe in the Bible. What you saying? What for?
Hold on, Pastor Wolford gonna respond to that. Go ahead.
Don't throw the don't bring the pastor in this.
Pastor, is it witchcraft if a woman withholds intimacy from her husband?
Go ahead, Pastor.
Witchcraft.
Go ahead.
Sorcery, even.
Let me take this one from you.
No comment. I got it.
Pastor Wolford, do you have anything you want to say at this moment?
I just feel the need to pray right now. That's all I
And see, Nate, I agree with the pastor. I agree with the pastor wholeheartedly.
Oh my
God! My spirit, my soul is telling me.
I said, let's do it. I said, the brother said,
I will follow
let's
it.
put a prayer down.
Dr. Bennett, what are your words?
Pastor, I will pray with you. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead, Pastor. Go and lead us in something. We need some clear hearts and some clear minds.
So can I go back just to the statement about when the previous question about the bed being undefiled? I want to make sure that when we talk, we do as much as we can to contextualize when we throw around text and scriptures to know what we're talking about, because we go down bunny trails and making sure that what we talk about in the bedroom, the undefiled, has to do with making sure you don't bring anything that's impure into the bedroom. It's any adultery, any fornication, any behavior that goes contrary to the vows that were made between a man and a woman. It doesn't give permission for you to do whatever you want to in the bed. That's not what that is. So be clear about that. And then just there's slippery slopes we get on when we take text out of context for what the author intended for it to be. So just be careful in that. When we start throwing around scriptures and text, to understand what the author's intent for that word was.
So, pastors, in that case, in the Bible, when they start stating that your body is not his and his body is not yours, what are they trying to say? What's the context, in your opinion? That is it just yours sometimes, or is it yours all the time?
You're literally trying to test a pastor?
No, that's not a question. But this is the problem. The problem is that we should be able to have a conversation.
Well, so so it goes back to referencing. So if you look at Genesis 2, when it talks about a man is supposed to leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife, and they're to become one. It is a marriage union. Is you can't be two individuals coming into marriage. You have to become one. And part of that is coming to a mutual agreement. What are our rules of engagement and our, what are the sexpectations of the relationship? Sexpectations. What are we going to do in the bed? And let's come to some agreements. She does not have permission to violate your body just because you have a marriage certificate. He does not have the permission to violate you and what you are agreeable with. Those are conversations that you begin to have, that you can study, and you got to take each other to those places slowly and be agreeable to it. You know, the whole sticking gerbils and doing stuff like that. If that bro don't want that, you have to be careful. You got to make sure that you understand context and have these rules of engagement of how you're going to have a relationship. You can't.
I agree with that. I want to ask the good doctor, and partially this is going to be for Nate too, because in that sense, you know, we've heard stories where women that has been married in the marriage and women that has been separated from their husbands, and they file police reports against their husband that their husband raped them. And I know Nate have probably had situations where women have come and filed a complaint against the husband that they separated from, but because they are legally married, the man still think they have a right to her sexually. And then he sexually violates her, and he feel that it's justified because they're still married in the eyes of God. Now, what are your opinions, first to you, doctor, on that? And then Nate, tell me, have you experienced those incidents where women have filed police reports against their husbands, whether they still legally married to them and living with them, and as opposed to if they're separated and living separately?
Yeah, being married to someone does not give you permission to force your will on another person. You cannot force your will on another person just because you're married. No matter in no instance is it okay to force your will upon another person.
Well, so my question is, so in the Bible, since we're talking about the Bible, it talks about that you guys should not stop having sex unless you're fasting and praying, and that should be for a short term, and y'all should go back at it because that give the devil a place to tempt the two. So, but what you're saying is that in marriage, it is basically okay if a woman just decide that, hey, she don't want to have sex no more, her husband just have to deal with that. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's not what you're hearing. You're not hearing that. That's not what I said.
That is definitely not what I meant. But I want Nate to answer that question from being a former police. Have he had that experience with women filing police reports against their husbands or their ex-husbands or whatever for raping them and thinking it's justified because, oh, she's still my wife, I can do what I want, that's my wife, you know?
No, I've never had a case like that between married couples. I have not. And I don't know if that's because you might have a woman who feels like she's not it's not appropriate for her to call the police on something like that, right? So not to say it doesn't happen, I'm sure it does happen and it has happened, but I've never received a report or investigated that specific type of setup. I will say, because I think if it has happened, it's in the context of abuse, and you have a lot of abuse that happens in homes that go underreported, as we know, and the wife might feel like because of her religious vows, or some people have I've went to a lot of Christian homes, as you can imagine, where there is a perversion of the understanding of what the Bible is asking them to do or not do, or just the religion, or just doing people who are religious just in general. And so a lot of times they lean on like the pastor is saying, they don't properly understand the text, or they don't interpret it properly, and therefore they make decisions based off of that. I've seen that plenty of times in just domestic related, whether it's child raising or relationships between partners. I have seen it just people who are cohabitating. You know, I've seen it in that form, but not from a married couple. But yeah, that's a great question.
And I think it happens, you know, the same way a lot of rapes happen with women that don't get reported, is because they're going to think that if they report their husbands, they're going to think people are going to look at them in a certain way. But that's your husband. Why? How could he do that to you? That couldn't be, you know, like lawfully or legally right. He's your husband. But there is cases where women, especially women that have separated from the husband and no longer with the husband, and it has happened. And the women, some has reported, but a more percentage of women have not reported it happening because fear of not being believed, just because the man is their husband and they are not legally divorced yet or whatever. But I have heard of those incidents.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems just in general with domestics, if we just talk about domestics and just from a form of abuse, is again, it's adults confuse abuse and discipline as well, right? So, you know, people can use sex as a form of, in their mind, in a sense of perverted way, thinking that they're disciplining someone in a form of whether restricting them or taking it when they know they're not in the mood or they're not happy with that person as a way of trying to show power over that person. So, and again, if you're married or that's right, control. That's a better word, control over that person. And so it is. You know, there's the psychosis behind human behavior. Sometimes it's so weird, you guys. And when you see it, it's hard to make sense of it. You see a lot of it with narcissistic people. That's like a big thing. People who are like narcissists, you see them do things like that for control as a control tactic. And then sometimes you have women who feel like they can't speak or say anything about it just simply because they feel like they have made these vows, right? Some people are diehard religious, religion, diehard to a T, and they govern themselves off of a misinterpretation of scripture. I see it all the time. And I mean, we hear it right here in this conversation. Even myself confused. And that's why I asked the question. I thought, and I really appreciate the clarification, because I thought when they said when they said the bed can't be defiled, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, turn up. And so let me crack out this Kama Sutra book.
Potentially can. I see no issue with that.
But I understand what the pastor was saying. I think the way him and Sir Hale explained it, I've never heard that conversation at church be addressed that way. But the way, just in that moment, hearing you guys break it down eloquently, it made a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
It made a lot of sense, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate you guys just being open and willing to have the conversation. So thank you for that.
You're muted, Black Man.
The last question for the night before we wrap up, I got one from Marcus here. Marcus says, so then a wife can't be mad if she's not giving her man sex, then the man shouldn't be called cheating for getting it somewhere else. Let's start with Pastor Wolford first, and then we'll go down. Pastor Wolford, your thoughts?
So the statement from Mark is that, does that give you a license to cheat just because you're not being fulfilled by your wife? And the answer to that is no. That's part of the Hebrew text of 13 of the bed being defiled. Anytime a man and a woman enters into intercourse, there's blood secreted between the man and the woman. So that's what adulterates a relationship, is when there's a transfer of adultery means breaking of a covenant and an agreement between two people. Adulterate means the shedding or the spilling. Contracts used to be made and written in blood. And so when you adulterate, when you enter into a woman, a man and a woman consensually agrees to have sex, there's blood transferred between. You may not see it, but there is a little understanding of that is you've adulterated each other's body. So that undefiled is you don't adulterate the bed by bringing in another adulterated physical person from someone else. So no, you cannot. If your wife does not, if she's not at a place where she's agreeable to have intimate sexual behavior with you, you all need to have that conversation, go to counseling, go to therapy to get that worked out. It does not give you a license and permission to go out and have an affair.
Woohoo! Hey, we'll get certain.
And I would even say, if it still didn't work out, maybe that man should leave that woman before he cheats on her. Would you agree to that? If he's not getting his manly duties fulfilled in the marriage.
No, that's not grounds for divorce.
So he should stay in a sexless marriage.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they need to go to counseling and try to figure out how they can get that reconciled. There's a reason why that woman may not be sexually providing for him the way he needs to. There's all levels of conversations that need to have, and he needs to be sensitive to that. For some reason, men we believe we own a woman's body. We should be able to get it when we want to, without having some sensitivity to what her body's going through, the changes that she's gone through, what's happening to her physically, emotionally, psychologically. So there's conversations that need to take place of why she is not sexually attracted to you, or he may not be satisfying her like he thinks he is. So you got to ask her all these questions.
Yeah, I agree with those things, but I was looking at it in a, if all those resources have happened and nothing is happening, what would be your stance then?
Those are conversations between a man and woman that they have to go to some counseling and figure out what are the alternatives. If she just completely opts out of sexual relationships, she then is abdicating her wifely duties to satisfy her husband. Then those are conversations as to why do you feel like you're abdicating your roles to satisfy your husband. And if she continues to defy that, then she is out of line. If it's been addressed, and she has no rationale as to reasons why she won't satisfy or why she will not participate in that, then there's some conversations that they need to have with their pastor as to grounds for whether or not the church will issue a divorce. A church will issue a divorce decree for that, for her withholding intimacy from her husband. But don't just do it. Go have that conversation with your pastor.
Well, maybe in a capacity if you're Christians, I actually disagree with that part, because sometimes when you go to church, pastors can be one-sided to, lean more towards the other. I think an outside person would be a better person, like someone that they both don't know, so that they can have a different perspective, because most pastors are not licensed therapists, are not licensed counselors, marriage counselors. So I think someone outside of the church might be a better, and this is just my humble opinion, because I've seen in incidents where it becomes one-sided with the pastor that is not licensed in marriage counseling and marriage therapy, that may lean one towards one of the spouses than the other based off of what that person is telling them. But if they go to a person that don't know either one of them, can give a better perspective. What is your stance on that?
Well, can I make a comment to that, please?
So sure, but I refer, as a pastor who has masters in theology and marriage and family, I refer a lot of my to psychologists and outside people. So I agree with you. Not every pastor is equipped to provide that type of counsel to their congregation, and pastors need to be aware of their limitations and capacity. But that is not to cast a negative aspersion on every pastor, because some pastors you don't have to always have a marriage counselor or clinical background to give sound biblical counsel to your couples. I personally typically refer out, because in my shepherding capacity, I have found it's best in many instances to leave certain issues to an outside person so that I can shepherd them in a different way. And, people who are part of my church, they know 90% of the time when they come to me and it's an issue that's needing higher level of clinical capacity that I may be willing to engage in, I refer out to other people. So I would agree with you in that context. I do. All and right. It's not just because he can't be impartial. Sometimes it's a capacity issue that, in my practice and my working with individuals and in many contexts, I refer out in many of those instances.
Okay, so anybody else have any questions? I mean, anything they want to? Well, I'll go down the line. We already got OG Patrice. Let's go with the Book of Genesis. We're gonna get to you in a minute, Great Pierre. Book of Genesis. Go ahead.
I didn't have any questions.
Anything? No final words?
Oh, this is final words?
Yeah.
Interesting topic tonight.
Exactly.
Very good.
All right, so let's go, Great Peel.
Final words is pretty much vet wisely. The pastors pretty much said it better than I could even say it, even when I was doing my motivational coaching. But I'm not a PUA. Shout out to the PUAs out there. If somebody comes to me and they're asking for a lot of stuff that I can't provide them, I got to be have that responsibility. Say, hey, go to a doctor, go to this person, because if you're saying, hey, I want to squat and do all this extra stuff, you know, I'm not going to just take your money just to be taking your money. And then you come back even more hurt mentally, emotionally than you already is. Just like the pastor saying, you're more hurt, more spiritually and physically, because it might come out a different way, you know. And for the to the young lady in the yellow, if you actually are coming across these type of people in that circle, because I know everybody have their own little space in their bubbles. If you do come across those type of people that say, "Oh, well, they feel like that pastor's favoring them," okay, cool. Did your pastor recommend you a psychologist or a licensed marriage counselor? If the answer is no, yes, then you should be responsible to recommend that because they're talking to you about that. So I just want to put that out there for any viewers out there. If you have these people complaining, my pastor, heck, sometimes even licensed professionals, you may feel like they're favoring one side, but you have to take your own responsibility to open up your mind a little bit, your heart, to say, hey, look, you know what? It can't be me. Because we some stuff just 5 minutes before I came here, we got some hard-headed people on the panel. You know what I'm saying? So take that in mind. So I'll leave it with that.
All right, Dr. Bennett.
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on tonight. This was definitely a very deep subject. Just my summary on the first half of this conversation. I remember a few years ago when Adrian Peterson, NFL running back, got into trouble for abusing his child and the areas where the child was abused or whatnot. And I just remember the conversation within our community. And again, this pushback, this back and forth between, whether or not we should be corporately disciplining our children or not, and just just the dysfunction or just the dialogue. It was just so back and forth on that. But the sad part was you still had a child that was abused, and nobody really wanted to put the emphasis there. So I think that I think this is a conversation I think we need to continue to have. I think we need to end the romanticization of how we were brought up or how people used to do it back in the day. It doesn't mean you don't call out that it was wrong. And but no one wants to disrespect their mothers or their elders or their ancestors or whatnot. So we have this issue where we can't just call things as they were. So I do hope that we can continue to elevate this conversation and put these things out. That the way things were done in the past is not a playbook for how things should go in the future. So I think we can so I think we need to continue to push this dialogue and conversation, and definitely get to an understanding of other way and learn other ways how we can discipline, how we can nurture and lead our children in the fear of the Lord without resorting to these measures. So that's my takeaway from the first half. In regards to this conversation, I don't have much more to add, but I find it interesting that a lot of people when they talk about scriptures, they talk about the Bible. There's one book that you rarely hear a sermon that you'll never hear a sermon from, and that's from the Songs of Solomon. It's in the Bible. It's a whole book. And rarely you'll ever get a scripture on. We always talk about what goes wrong, but we never talk about how it can be done right. And so I just find it interesting how you'll rarely hear a sermon in there that talks about this eros love that can happen, what true love between a man and woman looks like, and we never talk about that. So I find that interesting. In regards to the comment that was raised about calling it cheating, a woman shouldn't call it cheating if a man steps out. I just say this: it's just a bad situation. I will certainly co-sign and say that I can never justify a man stepping out. I just can't bring myself to do that. But at the same time, I'm not going to be afraid to call out that if a woman is willfully withholding sex from her husband, that's also stepping out in a way. But no one wants to take it there. Both are wrong, and certainly I understand there might be reasons why that's happening and whatnot. Definitely get the counseling and the support, but some people are just going to be like, look, or some ladies are just going to be like, look, I just don't want it that much anymore. You go through periods, you go through a lot of things, not want it. But again, I think there's still obligations that you do have to your spouse. I think that the scriptures that was raised earlier, I think that the overall main point is that you are not your own. That marriage, and again, being married 25 years, the biggest thing I've learned is that marriage is about sacrifice, and it's about giving. It's about what you're willing to do, not what you're willing not to do. And so I definitely believe there needs to be a place where you negotiate your sex expectations. I agree with that. I think that should happen early. I think that should happen when you're courting, and come to some common ground with which you can operate. But the idea is, if you're not willing to be selfless towards your spouse, man or woman, then you have to ask yourself, am I ready to be married? And rather than taking to these extremes of, will you be willing to do X, Y, and Z, or what have you? But again, can we come to some common ground here? So again, neither situation is right. But I hope we can start talking about what's good, what can be good about marriage. Start with the Songs of Solomon. We don't hardly talk about it, but it's there. And I think it paints a beautiful picture of what two loving people, what they do for each other, not what they're willing to do the least for one another. So like total sacrifice and give it to one another. So again, thank you for the opportunity to be on tonight, and I yield the floor.
All right. So let me say this before I bring up the next person. Listen, guys. I want to give a hand clap out to Mandrell. Let me tell you why. I've never, since I've been knowing Mandrell, I've never seen Mandrell agree with the preachers like he has agreed with the preachers tonight. Never, ever, ever. I have not seen him disagree with Sir Hale or Pastor Wolford tonight. And normally he just, wait a minute. But tonight he was shaking his head. I agree with the pastors. So let me go ahead and bring Mandrell up for final words. Mandrell, what's going on, man? Give us your final words.
Yeah, I agree with what's right. Okay, that's the bottom line. Right is right and wrong is wrong. If you're wrong, I'm going to disagree. If you're right, I'll agree. And tonight, the clergy were correct. You know what I'm saying? And when it comes to this, I'm glad we're having this conversation, because it's not a conversation. It's another one of those conversations that need to be had, and we don't have it enough. And I'm glad that the pastor actually brought the statistics to show it, because we hear a lot of rumors and whatnot, like, well, black men and black people, abuse their kids far more than any other race and blah, blah. And it's like, turns out, no, white kids get abused more. You know what I mean? It's good to have facts brought to the panel, but these are still issues that we do need to address and put changes into practice for it. Thank you for Black Man Unfiltered for having me up here on the panel tonight.
Absolutely.
I'm always grateful. Pastor, good to meet you. And thanks for coming and sharing.
Absolutely. All right. So let me go ahead and get Nathan Daly in this thing. Nathan, final words, my brother.
Yeah, you guys, I don't have any final words. I just was, it's out of my wheelhouse, but I really enjoyed the conversation. I learned a lot in a short amount of time. I'll go back and watch the piece that I missed. Black Man Unfiltered, I appreciate you. You're putting out a lot of great content, a lot of great conversation.
Thank you, Doctor.
And shout out to the pastor. I appreciate what you're doing, and then the willingness to come on and share that information. And that's it. Good conversation, man. And thank you for having me on and give my 2 cents. I really appreciate it.
All right, appreciate you too, man. All right, let's go ahead and get my guy in here, E-Man. I know he got something to say. Look at him. He look like he got something to say. Go ahead.
Woo! This is interesting. It was an interesting conversation. I wasn't here for the first part because, as he said, I was in church. But I did come in on that last end, and I just want to
know
say,
what church you go to. We need to know the name of your church and the name of your pastor.
Well, the first thing we'll say is this right here, is that I think we need to have more conversations about, that second part of the conversation, because I believe that I strongly believe deep down in my heart that we need to talk about that part of the vetting, talking about sex, talking about if a woman can just take that thing away from you. Because if you say, I'm going to take it away from you, and there's nothing you can do but go through counseling, and at the end of the results, somebody else really kind of controlling your future, I think that's really hard. And I can't even imagine it, because me and my wife, we talked about this. We talked about what my responsibilities as a husband and what I felt her responsibility as a wife is. So, but yeah, shout out to that. I don't really want to say too much on it, but I definitely think that we got to vet really strong. And if she said that if a woman give you signs that she just can take something away from you, and you doing what you're supposed to do as a man, that's some red flags. I'm just gonna leave it right there.
I appreciate you. Hey, my brother from another mother coming to the stage. Black Silk is his stripper name, but his pastoral name is Sir Hill Speaks is in the building. Go ahead, Doc.
Not black silk.
Whoa.
I was gonna say black satin though.
Yes, black satin. Oh yeah, I gave him another one. Black satin. My bad. Come on.
Black Man Unfiltered, I appreciate you having me here tonight. Really appreciate you. Appreciate the Dr. Reverend who was here tonight. I got to do some PR cleanup after this statement. But I do want to say this. To the point, to the question that Marcus has, just because we got a reason to do wrong doesn't mean we have a right to. In marriage, you are going to go through some things. And sometimes you can't explain it, you can't expect it. We got to be quick to try to fix and not quick to try to leave. And going on 15 years of marriage, you learn that when you're in it, everything is not so cut and dry. You're figuring things out. And the biggest thing that we have to do is sow love, sow understanding, both contribute that, do as much as you can. So when you go through those hard times, you've got enough investment to sustain you when things are not going so well. So before we quick to leave and before we quick to say, you know, I wouldn't take it, be quick to pray, be quick to love, and be quick to do all you can to invest in your marriage, because you never know, something can happen to you and you might need some grace as well. And I wouldn't want you to get left because you were going through a time that maybe you couldn't understand. So guys, talk it out, work it out. And if you guys can't work it out, then we'll have those other kind of conversations. But you don't just stay in a marriage because things are going well and going your way. You work through tough things. So I'll say that. The other part, when it comes to abuse, I want us to be able to speak up and speak out. There was no reason why you should shave off years of your life because you were trying to protect everybody else when you were suffering internally. Now, when I say speak out, I don't mean go blast it on social media like so many people do, but go talk to somebody who can be objective to help you to work through the issues that you have so that you can have the peace and freedom to have a more improved life. So love each and every one of you. Speak out, stay in your marriage, do all that you can. Marriage is beautiful. Thank you, guys.
All right. So I got everybody, right? Is it everybody except Pastor? I'm bringing him up. Did I get everybody? Ain't miss nobody? All right. All minds clear, all hearts clear. All right. And our guest for the evening, my pastor, Charles Wolford II. Your final words, Doc.
Well, again, thank you, Black Man Unfiltered. And again, congratulations to your success. Thank you for having me, to all of the panelists and the guests. God bless you all real good. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. It is my prayer that each and every one of us collectively would lift up a voice to situations that we find that are egregious in our community, particularly those things that are causing hurt, harm, and danger to our young people. Put whatever voice platform that you have to speak out against child abuse this month. This is National Child Abuse Awareness Month. We encourage you, if you see something, say something. We all have the responsibility to make sure that we protect our young people. They are valuable to us. And when they do not have voices, we have to speak up for them. We have to stand in the gap for them as much as we can. So God bless you real good. Thank you again. Pray that God's blessings will be upon you in all of your endeavors and all that God is calling you to be a steward over. Grace and peace to each and every one.
All right.
Thank you, Doctor. I appreciated your perspective. Learned so much, from I didn't, and it's so funny because I didn't even know that this was child abuse month, and that's something that we need to bring more to the light. So thank you for making me aware of that, because I didn't even know that. I don't know if anybody else on the panel did, but I didn't. And I think we need to highlight these things, especially within our community more. So thank you for that information.
Right. And now, guys, I didn't want to forget one of my brothers that was backstage for me that sacrifices the spot to bring up Either Man Williams. But I saved him for very last for a very good reason. And the reason for that is because we know what he used to be, his past career. And so I want to bring him up now. Black David is in the building. So let's get him in here.
Lord.
So Black David, give us your final word as you leave out tonight.
I would say that
yeah. Hold on. Get your move. You got to dance first. Go ahead. Do the Nigerian shuffle. Go ahead. Show us.
Not the African music.
Go ahead.
Let's cut the music. Let me get straight to the point. This is one of the best topics I've heard so far on this platform. The pastor knowledge and wisdom is much needed, which he can come back for another deep level of conversation with his insight and his understanding. I'm glad he broken down a level of understanding some topic that I had issue on over the years, and he brought some clarity. I want to thank Sir Hill Speak. I want to thank Black Man Unfiltered to have me on the panel because this is something I've been talking about for many years in other past churches and could never get no clarity, no understanding on these topics. But today, Pastor Wolford really helped me out a whole lot. I gotta really take my hat off to the guy. This is a great panel, great show. What can I say? This is really needed for our community. Let's keep this going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Black David. I appreciate you, man. All right, guys.
Hey,
So
hey,
listen.
Black Man Unfiltered. Is Nate still on the panel?
No, he's gone.
Oh, he left.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's gone. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here tonight. As usual, we had another great show. Next week, we will have also another great show. It takes a lot of work into putting together these talking points, but I really want to concentrate on talking points that nobody else is talking about. I don't think anywhere else on any other platform, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, that they're having a conversation about child abuse today.
No.
Or has had a conversation about child abuse, period. So, and I'm glad to have my brother, Sir Hill Speaks here. Make sure you go subscribe to Sir Hill Speaks. He also has an awesome platform with awesome content as well, guys. Please go subscribe to him. If you need financial stability, you need financial advice, please go see Either Man Williams at eithermanwilliams.com. Mandrell is on the Black Man Unfiltered Network channel as well on Wednesday, tomorrow night. He'll be here at 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And also we have the Great Pill podcast. Go and subscribe to Great Pill podcast. We got to support him. The Book of Genesis. Please go and support the Book of Genesis. She has some great pastor. Listen, if you go over there, you may have to get baptized after those conversations that we have over there at the Book of Genesis. You have to go get rebaptized out. And then we have OG Patrice, who is a supporter of everybody's platform. Thank her for being here as well. And she's also a champion of the ADOS. If you anything ADOS, you need to go see OG Patrice. She got your back. She got the information for you. And then Canadian-born Nigerian has his own channel as well. Make sure you go subscribe to him for any IT needs, any technical needs that you may have. Please go see Canadian-born Nigerian. You will see all of the links in the chat if you need to get those. But please go subscribe to those channels. Thank you, guys.
Black Man, may I say something?
You may.
Emmanuel, are you going to have a continuation of that topic we were covering on the police reform and all of that? Because I got some smoke for Nate, and I was hoping he stayed on because I wanted to let him know I got some smoke for him because he did a whole thing on me and didn't give me a heads up or a chance to defend the things that he said. So I got some smoke for that, brother. So please have a continue.
OG, to be clear, Emmanuel does not have a platform or show on the Black Man Unfiltered Network. That would be me.
I said Manuel. I said Manuel.
Mandrell.
Oh, Mandrell. I'm sorry, Mandrell. I'm so sorry. I messed up your name. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I mean.
So Nate, if you're listening, I got smoke for you, bro.
You got smoke. Well, I'm gonna let him know.
And Mandrell, set that up. Yeah,
I am going to set that up. And in fact,
reach out to him.
It won't be tomorrow. It won't be next week, but perhaps the week after. Next.
All right. We'll set it up. Y'all
I'll get in contact with Nate and see if he's available. And the next time he's available, Wednesday at 8:30, I'm gonna do it and we'll announce it. I'll do part 2.
Absolutely. All right. Well,
and reach out to me, Mandrell. If I'm not aware of when you're gonna do it, Black Man Unfiltered has my information. Just let him know. Say, hey, reach out to OG Patrice.
Yep.
And I will be here with bells on.
I got you.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, guys, thank you again for being here tonight. If you're still here and you're still watching, thank you for all your support. Thank you guys for helping me get to the 1,000 subscribers. It was work, but we did it. Thanks, Sir Hell Speaks, for always having my back. Thank E-Man for always having my back, getting those subscriptions up as well. Mandrell, the Great Peel podcast, always calling my name out. The Book of Genesis, always calling my name out. OG Patrice, been up here with your boy. And then Canadian Born, man. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel and getting people in here, man. We got to that goal, but we're not done yet. We got to go up from here. So I appreciate you guys. Always, as I close, I would like to say, do something nice for someone, guys. Do something nice for someone. Pay for someone's grocery. Pay for someone's food that's standing in line, someone's coffee. You never know when somebody's going through. And if you don't have anybody else, and if you can't find anybody else to do anything for, do something nice for yourself, because self-care is the best care. This has been Black Man Unfiltered, Talk That Talk Tuesday, and we are out. Peace. Everybody wave bye. Everybody wave bye. Come on. Everybody wave bye. Nigerian